Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Los Gatos Joint Town Council and Parking Authority meeting of December 2nd, 2013. At this time, I'd like to request of the audience that you put your cell phones on silent. And would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Diane McNutt.
Here.
Councilmember Barbara Spector.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Brzezinski.
Here.
Vice Mayor Marcia Jensen.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Steve Leonardis.
Here. At this time, I would like to request that Kara Davison come forward. She's going to lead us in the pledge this evening. I'm going to say a few words about Kara, and then she will lead us in the pledge. Kara is a third grade student at Lexington Elementary School. Kara is in K-Kids, and she narrowly missed a spot on the student council at Lexington. Kara likes math, reading, science, and art. Kara loves to run. Kara did 24 laps last year in the Jogathon, which helped raise money for her school. Kara cares about people, animals, and the environment, and tries to do the right thing and encourage others to do the right thing too. Kara likes to swim and do gymnastics, and she is getting into soccer. Kara loves to hang out with her family and her neighborhood friend Ava, and loves her 2 guinea pigs, Noodle and Latte. Kara cares about global warming, and in her spare time, Kara enjoys drawing and watching TV, much to her parents' chagrin. So let's give a hand to Kara for leading us in the pledge this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Did a great job. Go and shake hands with the council. Next is our closed session report. Town Attorney.
That was a tough act to follow. On the closed session report, the council met tonight in closed session on 2 items. They took no action, and there's nothing to report out. However, on agenda item 2, which is the agreement with the new town attorney, that satisfies the reporting requirements of the Brown Act for the prior council closed sessions related to the agreement and the appointment.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to remind the audience that you can speak for 3 minutes on any matter that's not on the agenda. And please fill out a speaker card if you'd like to do so and hand it to the clerk. And the next is our council matters. Does any member of the council have anything to report? Seeing none, we're moving on to manager matters. Mr. Larson?
Yes. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, it's my honor to introduce you to someone you already know, which is Ms. Shelley Neese, who will be serving as interim clerk administrator, pending council review at the mid-year budget review of a reorganization in the offices. So Shelley Neese is stepping up as interim clerk administrator, ably supported and trained by former clerk administrator Jackie Rose. That concludes staff report. We do have a Did You Know as we enter the holiday season, which is being presented by Ms. Ronnie Nassi, Director of the Los Gatos Chamber of Commerce.
Good evening, members of the council, town staff, and fellow Los Gatos. I apologize. I lost my voice, or it's my Thanksgiving leftover. I'm not quite sure. Did you know that Los Gatos is the place to be for the holiday season? Your Chamber of Commerce is happy to once again offer holiday carriage rides, an over 30-year tradition in downtown Los Gatos. Ride in an elegant horse-drawn carriage with a driver and horses wearing holiday bells, whose tinkling as carriages ride through town brings a festive spirit that's unmatched in the Bay Area. Your 15 to 20-minute ride begins in Town Plaza Park and continues to the Almond Grove District, passing by some of the town's most beautiful historic homes and along festively decorated North Santa Cruz Avenue. More than 2,000 people annually enjoy this special treat, so make your reservation on the Chamber's website. Rides started last weekend and will be available December 6th and 7th, 13th and 14th, 19th through 22, from the 19th to the 23rd. Something new this year, more than 50 of downtown Los Gatos' finest merchants will be rolling out the red carpet for shoppers to stroll and be merry on the 3 Thursdays before Christmas until 9 p.m. The downtown holiday shopping stroll is being unwrapped by the Los Gatos Visitors Bureau, which is a partnership between the Los Gatos Chamber of Commerce and the town of Los Gatos to promote our gem of the Silicon Valley as a destination for visitors and our residents. There will be weekly drawings of merchandise and gift certificates donated by our local merchants and restaurants, as well as grand prizes, all for shopping at the participating merchants on December 5th, 12th, and 19th. So stroll, shop, and be merry. To make your visit to downtown more enjoyable, the town of Los Gatos is again providing complimentary valet parking available to shoppers and employees to help ease the parking crunch during the holiday season. Located in parking lot 4 off of North Santa Cruz Avenue between Grays Lane and Elm Street, the valet will be available most days in December from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. There are some days that start earlier and some that end later, so check the town's website for the complete schedule. Last but certainly not least are the annual tree lighting and Los Gatos Children's Christmas Holiday Parade. Join the Los Gatos Community Foundation and the town of Los Gatos as they light the beautiful tree in Plaza Park on Friday, December 6th. The festivities begin at 5, the lights on the tree go on at 6, and Santa arrives promptly in his antique fire truck/sleigh at 6:01. On Saturday, December 7th, Los Gatos is abuzz with the 57th Annual Los Gatos Children's Christmas Holiday Parade, sponsored by the Los Gatos Lions Club, Los Gatos Saratoga Recreation, in cooperation with the town of Los Gatos and Los Gatos High. This year's Grand Marshal, County Supervisor, and former Mayor of Los Gatos, Mike Wasserman, will kick off the parade at 11 a.m. sharp. So be sure when you make your holiday plans to include Los Gatos as your destination. You'll be glad you did. Happy holidays from the Los Gatos Chamber of Commerce and the town of Los Gatos. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nassi. Next is our consent calendar. These are items to be acted on in a single motion. Does any member of council wish to pull an item from the consent calendar? Mr. Przinsky?
Mr. Mayor, I would not want to pull an item, but I want a clarification from our Human Resources Director, if I can. It's item 3, the labor agreement with AFSCME. My concern in item 3 is the language related to the new Medicare alignment. This would be on page 3 of the staff report, item 2. As I read this, it clarifies what I think our current status is, but does not clarify what the new agreement is. Would you clarify that for us, please?
Certainly. Thank you for the opportunity to clarify. This tentative agreement with our AFSCME group does confirm that the Medicare eligible employees upon eligibility would have contributions at the level of the rates that are published by CalPERS, and it would be following the Medicare supplemented rates for Kaiser North.
All right. So, in effect, what it has, this is a change for us then. From
It is a
previous.
change. It currently follows the charts that are the same as active, and does not take into consideration that there's the Medicare supplemented rate. So this change is to align to the Medicare supplemented rate as published by CalPERS on an annual basis.
All right. If I might, there's an attachment under the AFSCME negotiations, the attachment to the package proposal dated November 12th, 2013. I think item 9 tries to make that statement. I'd like it for the record that this be inclusive, therefore, in the agreement itself, so that there is no confusion.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brzezinski and Rumi. Portillo. Now we have how can I say, does any member of the audience wish to pull an item for the consent calendar?
I submitted a card for number 2.
So item number 2 will be pulled. Can we have a motion from the council on the rest of the consent calendar? Mayor, or Councilmember Spector.
We have to remember.
Getting used to.
All right, I move to approve consent calendar items 1, 3, as it was just discussed, and 4.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Mr. Finley, will you please come forward?
Hi. I haven't done this in a long time. I submitted a single-page written statement, kind of like they do in Congress, and I left copies, and I've been told they've been sent down. I don't have any specific objections to this item. I had no other way to do this other than to pull it, but there's not enough information in the whole agenda packet for members of Los Gatos to offer any public input. So if the purpose of the agenda packet with all the background information kind of thing, it basically says there's a man named Robert Schultz. It doesn't say where he came from or anything, but there's a man named Robert Schultz that can be our attorney for the town. And it doesn't say anything about alternatives. It doesn't say what other choices, but it does say that in 10 days they want him to start. So it's kind of like, that doesn't sound like there's even much time for alternatives. I'm sure that there's been a diligent process, but if the community's supposed to have any kind of input, there really wasn't, that I can tell, much opportunity. And as far as the item, I don't even think the agenda items got to the library until probably a few hours ago because of the closing of the town and the closing of the library. They were kind of opposite or whatever. So basically all I'm saying is I don't have any comment on him, whoever Robert Schultz is. I met a gentleman who says he's Robert Schultz. But I have a comment that the thing that's in the agenda, that is, I assume, the thing that the council relies on, the info packet, we'll call it, it really doesn't give the rest of the council, from the way I read it, enough information about alternatives. It's like usually you see something, A has an alternative, B, and if we don't do this, this is the bad thing that happens. It's just kind of like says, here's this thing, this is the price, just do it. So it might be a routine thing, but my reading is that the contract is forever, not forever ever, but it doesn't have an end date. It's like he'll start and continue till we tell him to stop. So it's not a small decision. I know that he's not going to be here for 100 years, but it's not saying when, how long the commitment is other than ongoing. So I have 30 seconds left if anybody has any questions, but no, it told me I have 30 seconds left. So if anybody has any questions, otherwise my single-page written statement is the only thing I have to say now. I did put some other items in there that supported the part of the problem. Some of it was the getting copies of contracts, and I'm sorry the paper's handwritten. There wasn't any way to type it and print it kind of thing. So my time's out, so I guess that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Finley.
Okay.
Does anybody on council have questions for Mr. Finley? Okay. I would look to council for a motion on agenda item 2. Councilmember McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to suggest that we ask staff to clarify 2 points that he brought up. One was when the agenda items and the packet was available at the library. And then also perhaps the manager could do a real quick synopsis on the 2 town employees that the council hires and what that process is, that this isn't a contract for services, but it's an employment contract.
With permission of the mayor, in response to Councilwoman McNutt, as for the first question, the clerk's office has just informed me across the dais that the packet was provided to the library on Wednesday. The library did have its traditional closure on Thursday, Friday for the Thanksgiving holiday, but it was available there today. In terms of the second question brought up by the councilwoman, per town code, the council has 2 appointees that they hire as employees of the town. Those are the town attorney and the town manager. And in this case, upon the notice of the pending retirement of the incumbent town attorney, the council launched a search process and solicited applications for a town attorney that was supported by an outside professional search firm and recruitment firm, surveyed number of applicants, and has made an offer that has been accepted to the candidate the council felt was the strongest candidate to serve the council and the town for the years ahead. And that candidate has accepted the offer and agreed to the terms of employment that are before you tonight for ratification by the council. The entire search process was conducted in accordance with state law, specifically the Brown Act, regarding public and closed session actions. Your action tonight concludes that search and selection process.
Thank you. Does any other member of council have questions or comments? So I'd officially like to close this public hearing and ask for a motion on agenda item or consent item 2. Councilmember McNutt.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve agenda item 2.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. And we move on to our next item, which is to officially welcome Mr. Robert Schultz this evening. He will be joining us on the dais on December 16th. So thank you. If we would like to give him a round of applause. Welcome aboard. Moving on to our public hearings, further public hearings. Our first is conditional use permit application U-13-011, project location 32 North Santa Cruz Avenue. And this is the Napa style. We are going to consider a request of approval to modify an existing CUP for a formula retail store, Napa style, to allow beer and wine tasting.
Point of order. Verbal communications.
I am very sorry. Thank you for bringing that forward. Next is verbal communications. Any member of the public who wishes to come forward, you have 3 minutes to speak. You could speak on any item not on the agenda. And it looks like we have 3 cards. The first would be Mr. John Shepherdson. Please come forward.
John Shepherdson, 120 Oak Rim, number 20. Why the lawsuits? Next. Los Gatos' general plan, the GP, it's the town's constitution for land use. There's a 35-foot maximum height limit for the Albright site. It's subject to rigid development standards. We believe that's mandatory language, maximum limit rigid. The project was approved at 65 feet. The general plan rule was 35 feet. We've gone to 65. The rule was broken. What's the adverse impact of violating the general plan? The environmental impact report paid for by the town, or the town's environmental impact report paid for by the developer said that the environmentally superior alternative, the best developed use of the property, was 350,000 square feet of commercial office space. The town approved 485. The differential is 135,000 square feet over the EIR best of 350,000. What does that equate to? It's equal in square footage to 67 single-family homes at 2,000 square feet. It's a whole new subdivision. Why allow another large subdivision size amount of square feet above the EIR best land use? Why don't we do what is best for the town? There's a better way, an elegant solution, win-win-win. The $350,000 is best for the environment. Developers will make millions of dollars. This is the Carlyle Group. It keeps Netflix. They only need 242,500 square feet, and it allows them 107,500 square feet of space to grow into. It protects the privacy and views of Charter Oaks residents, the same views and privacy that ballot leader Leslie Logan is fighting for her own home. Moreover, Ms. Logan's neighbor only seeks a two-story enhancement in the neighborhood, which already has heights of 2 stories. And there's no violation of the mandatory general plan standards, as I understand it. This is the home that she objects to, the improvement. Leslie Logan and those that she's gathered up in support, please join us in our fight to protect the views and privacies of all Los Gatos residents. Support the elegant solution of 350,000 square feet of commercial office space. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherdson. Next is Cecil Annison.
My name is Cecil Annison. I have an audio clip I'd like to play if it works. At the same time, I'd like to have a visual of the conversation. So that would be... Oh, okay. Okay, so I've been really concerned about the signature gatherers, not that they're gathering signatures, but what they're telling people. My own conversation with 2 particular signature gatherers I recorded, which I believe is legal, and I'll just read this to you. Miss, we are dedicated to keeping Netflix here. I say, yeah, that's me in italics, yeah. Do you live in the city of Los Gatos? Mm-hmm. What is the city what it is? City Council voted 5-0 to expansion of the Netflix campus. One lawsuit by one organization froze everything. So we're attempting to go directly to the voters for an up or down vote, and that's what we're gathering signatures for again, to place this on the ballot. So what are you asking for? A signature for the initiative. No, I mean in the initiative. What are you asking for? Okay, right now, there are no typos here. Right now, because the general plan is not corresponding with what they call the city, I think they call it the building ordinance, they filed a lawsuit. We're attempting to go 65 feet high. That's the crux right there, the rub. So that's what we're addressing. We're addressing their lawsuit by signing this initiative, we can circumvent both of them with the approval of the voters. What does that have to do with Netflix? That's the campus. That's the Netflix buildings right there. Why do they need so much space? Well, that's what they're asking for. It's 485,000 square feet, miss. Sir, can you help me? Okay. I don't know if I have time for this one. The point of this one, I just want to point out one part where I say, where is that? It says the expansion is going to be at Winchester and 85, where the light rail terminal is. My concern is that both of these people are giving erroneous information in order to get signatures from citizens. Whether I stand for it or not is not the point. I do not like to have our citizens signing things when they're given erroneous and actually untrue, erroneous, and shady information. I wanted to bring this to your awareness and to the citizens of the town of Los Gatos. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Annison. Are there any other speakers who would like to speak on any item not on our agenda this evening? Seeing none. One. Oh. I don't have. This was from a previous speaker.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Mary Bagatellos, and I actually came down to speak on another matter, but actually just this week that did happen to me. I was at Walgreens and I did sign the petition thinking that the extension for Netflix thing, they told me it was going to be at the light termination of the light rail site, and had I realized that it was going to be on over by Alberta Way, I probably wouldn't have signed it. So I think it was misrepresenting, the people having the petition were misrepresenting where the location was. So.
Thank you.
Could I ask just to make a comment?
May
I make a comment? I'm not asking a question.
Oh, okay.
No.
Mr. Brzezinski.
Alberta Way is off of Highway 9. No. No. I just wanted to clarify, it's at Highway 85 in Winchester. That's where it is.
It is Highway 85 in Winchester.
Yeah.
Okay, well then that was correct. According to that I was seeing, I thought there was an Oak Rim Way or Alberta Way.
No.
Okay, sorry about that.
Thank you. Are there any more speakers wishing to come forward?
Hi, I'm Natalie Ladd. I didn't expect to speak on this issue, but I wanted to tell you what my experience was. I was approached in my apartment complex where I live way in the back, and someone came and knocked on my door and said that they needed a signature to get Netflix approved. So me and my son both signed the petition, not really realizing what we were signing, and they said it was to approve Netflix building and to be able to bring in more income from taxes to the town of Los Gatos. And then later I went and researched it, and I realized, wait, it's already been approved. And then the following day when I was at Farmers Market, they approached me again. Another gentleman approached me, and I said to him, why are you guys doing this? This is already approved. It's been passed more than once. And he admitted to me that he was a Netflix employee as well as the other person that came to my door, and they said that they were trying to get more signatures so they wouldn't lose their jobs. So I just wanted to share that information with you guys because I felt like it was a little misrepresented, because I thought it was a citizen of Los Gatos that was getting the signatures, but it was actually Netflix employees that were getting the signatures. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers who would wish to speak on any item not on our agenda this evening? Seeing none, we will move on to our first public hearing, which is the conditional use permit U-13-011, project location 32 North Santa Cruz Avenue. And this is the Napa style store. We are considering a request of approval to modify an existing CUP for a formula retail store, Napa style, to allow beer and wine tasting sales and events on the property zone C2 LHP. And we have the applicant coming forward. You have 10 minutes to state your.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question of staff before we go into the hearing?
Yes, you may.
Just for clarification, the amount of square footage, if the area is sublet, correct me if I'm wrong, is 200 square feet. And one, is that correct? And two, if it's not sublet, if Napa does the wine tasting, what is the area? Is it still 200?
The square footage permitted under the current conditions within your CUP that's presented to you is 200 square feet for the wine or beer tastings, whether it's sublet or whether it's used by Napa style.
Thank you very much.
Actually, I wanted to mention that we do have a staff report this evening presented by Associate Planner Marnie Mosley. So before you have your chance to put in your 10 minutes, we will hear from Marnie.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I want to remind you that you do have a desk item on this item, and I believe the applicant also provided you an additional supplement just before the meeting. The applicant is seeking to modify the conditional use permit for an existing formula retail tenant. The applicant is looking to add three elements. 1, off-site sales of beer and wine. 2, sample tastings of offered beer and wine during regular business hours. And 3, to provide a limited number of charity events for nonprofit organizations from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. The beer and/or wine tasting would be provided for a fee within a designated 200 square foot area only. The tastings would be limited to a maximum of 5 1-ounce sample pours per customer per day. The charity events would be for registered 501c3 or 501c6 nonprofit organizations only and would take place after regular business hours between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. only. The applicant would be limited to a maximum of 3 events per month with a maximum of no more than 24 events per year. Each event would have a maximum of 25 guests. Any service of food and alcohol at these events would be provided by an ABC licensed caterer. The application was considered by the Planning Commission on October 23rd of this year. The Planning Commission recommended denial of the application based on a concern regarding intensification of alcohol uses and parking needs within the downtown without a clear benefit to the community. Staff recommends the Town Council deny the application, but reminds the Council that it's within their discretion to approve any, all, or none of the 3 elements proposed by the applicant, or to provide additional language or conditions as desired. This completes staff's report. We are here if you have any questions.
Does council have any questions for staff on this item? Councilmember McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I have a couple that I'd like to have clarified. The first is, under current policy, just generally, what is the right of any merchant to close their shop and make it available for a private event? And I won't talk about whether there's alcohol served or not, but can any store close and then have a private party in that store in the evening without having any approval from the town?
As far as staff is aware, there is no language within town code that specifically restricts that unless it's discussed within an existing CUP or such.
And if that is true, and the people who are having that private event are able to legally serve alcohol because they're using a caterer with the proper license or whatever that situation is, does that change that answer, or is it still currently it's their right to do that?
It's staff's understanding that that would be their right under what you discussed, if they're using appropriate ABC approvals with an ABC catered.
Okay. And then my second question is, on page 3 of the staff report, there is somewhat of a clarification on definition of the approved use, this regional formula retail business solely for the sale of home furnishings. And it talks about what that excludes, but it doesn't talk about what it includes. So, so where I'm going with this is the sale of bottles of wine within the definition of home furnishings? How is that, or how is home furnishings defined?
Well, the language that's provided on page 3 is what the existing conditional use permit language is. The proposed language is different, and that's provided in Attachment 5, Exhibit A.
Can you just read what that sentence is, since I don't have things tabbed here? And we don't have electronic packets yet.
The use listed is the approved use is for a formula retail business for the sale of home and dining accessories, including limited packaged food items and room temperature beer and wine packaged for off-site consumption.
Okay, and so the word limited is not defined, but it could be.
Correct.
Okay, I think that's all my questions for right now.
And Mr. Mayor, I did have one additional comment on the private events. If a commercial establishment were to have a private event that the town became aware of that had any impact on the town infrastructure, be it streets, parking, sidewalks, then the town does have the right to impose a special event permit for such use. It would take foreknowledge to impose that in advance, which doesn't always occur. And ABC does not require a special license for a private event where there is no consideration given for alcohol served. So if there's no ticket to get in or no transaction, then there's no ABC permitting required for that.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Councilmember Spector.
Thank you. Then let's circle back, if we could, Mr. Larson, to Ms. McNutt's question. A business, let's say a business in downtown, could close their store and have an after-hours event that includes the service of beer and wine without a special events permit. If the staff became aware of it, then the business could get or apply for a special events permit. Is that correct?
Largely correct. Obviously, if there are conditions in the CUP that constrain operating hours or constrain attendance or alcohol sales, there could be limits in a CUP that preclude it. But if you take a retailer that is having I'll just take a hypothetical holiday party for their employees on a Saturday evening, if there's no preclusion in the conditional use permit or the zoning for their zoning, the ABC, if it's a private event for no consideration given, would not give us advance notice because there's no ABC permit required. So typically, for an off-premises or on-premises alcohol license, the ABC provides the local jurisdiction notice of that, and that's how we can impose and inform our regulatory construct. If it's a private event where alcohol is being served without any consideration, then there is no ABC license required, and we would not receive that for notice from the ABC.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Mr. Larson, just to belabor this a little bit more, so as I listen to your responses and the questions, am I correct in thinking that the reason we are looking at a CUP amendment to allow the after-hours events is because this is a location that's governed by a CUP, and the CUP does not currently allow that? Is that correct?
And I believe the applicant is not proposing service of alcohol without consideration, that there'd either be ticketed events or for sale beer and wine. So there would be ABC licensing required, and that's why it's before you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Brzezinski.
Just want to make something clear. I think on the staff report, page 3, the last bullet, when it talks about special event, makes it abundantly obvious that except for all of those issues that are highlighted under special event, this is not a special event permit that's being required. This isn't one of those continuous events scheduled to take place on the street, sidewalk, alley, right-of-way, with crowd control issues and all those kinds of things. And given that fact, I think it's really clear that the application for a special events permit is not actually appropriate in this particular case.
Correct. The discussion was brought up at the Planning Commission, so staff provided some additional background on that.
I brought up the special event permit, not in relation to this application, but in relation to the private events being held at a commercial establishment.
Councilmember McNutt.
I'm sorry, just one more time. So do we have in our packets, and I'll hunt for it, the current CUP?
Yes, let me find that for you.
Because I wanted to verify that in the current CUP, there is something that says you cannot have a private event there in the evenings?
There is not. CUPs work under the assumption that if it's not listed, it's not permitted. So if it doesn't say that it's permitted, the town looks at it as not being a permitted allowance.
Okay, then I don't need to actually see it. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions from council? Seeing none, I would like to take this opportunity to remind the public, if you would like to speak on this matter, you can fill out a speaker card and you have up to 3 minutes to state your case for this. I'd like to call the applicant forward and you have 10 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members of the council, staff, for all your time and interest in this issue. Just to back up a little bit, there's two things that I think are very important to understand and I was looking at the art here, is that if you take that picture of the rock back there, there's 3 rocks and there's a whole picture. And we think that under the rules that we looked at months and months and months ago, I think it was almost a year ago, when we figured all this out was, look, we could ask for the world and it would still be within the scope of the picture. But since that time, we've really narrowed it down to a very small footprint of what we're trying to do here, and it's just the small rock that we want to go into the rest of the picture of the store. We're not looking to turn this into a liquor store or a Bevmo or a Total Wines and More. All we're doing is saying we want a few bottles around to sell, we want a few bottles around to taste, all as part of our Napa-style image. And that's the point of what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to turn this into a liquor store. And so I want to talk first about the supplement that I handed out earlier in the meeting, and there's 2 real important parts to that. One is that the staff council had come up with a recommendation regarding allowing the potential subleasees of that 200 square foot area for existing, and I just clarified it to say as long as they had a duplicate O2 privilege under the ABC laws, which means that you can have a remote tasting room as a winery. Obviously, you can't put a whole winery in the 200 square feet, but the word existing left some room for wavering in terms of whether it had to be existing on the date of the CUP or whether it could be existing at the time the sublease took place or what have you. So I just put in language attaching the duplicate O2, duplicate winery privilege that's allowed under the B&P code, and we can have that as part of the CUP, and that accomplishes exactly what I think staff was recommending. The second area of clarification was, sure, we could have the bottles of wine all over the store, et cetera, but we're willing to, because this is not our primary source of income in the store, is to say, okay, we'll limit it to 60 bottles around the store and another 60 bottles in the tasting area, and keep it from becoming a wine store and still keep it the flavor of of a home goods store under the existing CUP. To get to council person, is that the right word? Councilperson McNutt's comment regarding the special events and everybody else is here. We appreciate those concerns, and we didn't want to offend anybody by having these kinds of events, whether or not they're allowed, whether or not they're private, whether or not they're paid, whether or not the charity says it costs $35 to go to the event. We just wanted the town to know that we were available for this service, and we wanted to be able to put these on without having to come and get some permit that didn't quite apply to what we were doing. We were just trying to say, hey, we want advance permission to do this so we don't run afoul of anybody's concerns, and we don't run afoul of any rules or get fined after the fact or have you guys find out that, oh my goodness, they're doing this event and they didn't get a proper permit. Well, it doesn't really fit in the round hole. So we're just trying to do the right thing here and get that accomplished. In the same way, we're just trying to limit this to our real business purpose, which is to complement our existing home store and not to replace it. So that's all I have. Once again, thank you for your efforts, and I'm certainly available to answer questions.
Thank you. We have a question from the Vice Mayor.
Thank you, sir. I just have a question about how your stores work. I know that your store in Yountville has sample foods like the salt or the dips or the whatever with bread. Do you do that now, or you exclusively want to taste wine but not your other products?
I actually don't know why the store in Los Gatos doesn't do that. I haven't had that discussion with them. Certainly the Yountville store does taste some salts and some other things. I don't know if there were local health permits that they were worried about or something else, or something that wasn't in the CUP. They haven't asked me to look into that, and that doesn't seem to be an issue. Certainly if the council would like me to look into it, we can see why we're not doing it.
I'm actually not suggesting that you do it. I'm trying to draw a distinction between how I've seen your store practice, and you would have other products that you might taste, and why is it important to taste a particular product, wine and beer, as opposed to another product that you're equally or better known for?
a few packaged goods. I suppose that it's just once again something to bring additional people into the store and provide another area of marketing that currently this store is not doing that other stores have. So it's just bringing in a product line, and certainly the wine sampling or beer sampling is a more normal activity than pretzel sampling or salt sampling generally throughout the communities of the Central Coast and North Coast of California.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, your name was?
K. Christopher Branch, or KC.
Casey. Well, I'll probably call you Mr. Wrench, right?
No, branch like a tree branch.
Okay, Mr. Branch. Mr. Branch, I had a couple questions, and it may be that it's the materials that we've received, and it's not accurate, so I need to ask you. Assuming that you had these events after you closed the store, is it your statement or your objective that they would be limited to nonprofit organizations? Because that was what I saw as a good portion of what the Planning Commission was discussing.
Yes, they should be 501c3s or C6s. The C3 is your traditional charity. The C6 is more like your Chamber of Commerce.
Then the follow-up question is, because that's what I understood, how would the fact that the organization in your store is a 501c3 or a 501c6 be monitored by the town in order to determine if you are complying with your requested CUP?
So if the Los Gatos Table Society comes to us and they say we want to do a special event, it would be obviously in our interest to vet the Los Gatos Table Society to find out if they are a 501c3 or C6, and if not, say no thank you. And certainly if we put on the event for the Los Gatos Table Society and then you find out later, or the town finds out later, then we violated our use permit, and there's going to be some consequence, I would imagine. So it certainly, in the same way that if you violate any other provision or condition of a CUP, there's a consequence. So it would seem like that would be the order of business. And to take it back to Councilperson McKnight's comment, once again, we don't want to overstep bounds of what we're allowed to do, so we'd rather ask permission in advance.
All right, thank you. And then the other question, again, and this was in your materials or at the Planning Commission, you talked about providing beers and wines not generally available in Los Gatos. Is that your objective?
Yes, certainly now that you've lost at least the French store and some other stores, basically the idea is to bring in some unique labels, not bring in the large, there's 3 or 4 largest wine companies in the world, not to bring in those wines, but to bring in, the more handcrafted boutique wines, either from the area or from the Central Coast or from the Napa-Sonoma areas or Amador or some of that thing. But the idea is not to compete with the large chain stores, the grocery stores, et cetera, but to bring in some of the special boutique wines. Some wineries make only 100 or 400 or 1,000 barrels or cases even. So the objective is to bring those kinds of products to town that aren't readily available from those particular manufacturers.
And what this product mix is, or what the label is, would be dependent upon the choices made by your store.
Correct. And unless, of course, it was rented out, it was leased out to one winery, as staff suggested, where it would be leased out to one winery under that B&P who has a license as a duplicate winery to do tasting there, and then it would only be one winery, whether it be from in town or out of town. But it would then be a one winery tasting room, and from what I saw, there's only one winery tasting room within walking distance of the Los Gatos area, and that's up at Testarossa, which is about a mile away from here.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. I have several questions to ask you, and I'm somewhat mystified by some of the business strategies that you're putting forward here, so that's where I'm going. So that's kind of early warning system here. So first of all, you're asking for 3 different things. One is to sell bottles of wine in the store. One is to wine tastings in the store, and then this after-hours private party thing. In your reference, in your opening comment to the picture, are you saying you need all 3 of those pieces for it to work, or would any combination, 1, 2, or all 3 of those actually benefit the store?
Well, all 3 would benefit them all together. To then take 1 or 2 or 3 items out is still certainly gets us closer to where we are today, but it also may not be appropriate to make all the efforts that need to be made if you don't get those privileges. In other words, to just sell beer and wine without the opportunity to open people up to those flavors, those tastes, may not actually promote the wine enough. So then you're just limited to a label. And to go back to Councilperson Jensen's comment, once again, there's lots of those kinds of products available, but if we're talking about wineries that make 400 cases or 100 cases or 1,000 cases, those are wines that aren't going to be tasted by those people ever unless they're actually given the opportunity to take that taste and then decide that they want to spend a set of dollars on that particular bottle of wine. But if they're just looking at the label, they're not going to appreciate it and may not buy it. And that kind of strategy is consistent with the entire wine industry, where there is a lot of educational sampling and learning about wine, and that's the way that it's sold throughout the world, actually, is that try this, you'll like it. And that's in the methodology for selling wine that's tried and true for a good 50, 60 years in this country.
So I appreciate the persuasive argument, but bottom line, if you are only granted 1 or 2 and not all 3, are you saying that you would turn that down? Do you want us to do is it 3 or nothing? Is that?
Well, that's not my decision. That's the decision. I don't own Napa Style. I'm their lawyer, so that would be a business decision they would have to make, but that would certainly be something they would have to consider, is whether it's worth all the effort to go through it if there's only 1, 2, or 3, because we want to benefit the community. We want to be able to sell the wine in the way that we're used to selling the wine, which is to sample it first, and we want to be able to sell the product. So if you have wine tasting but can't buy the product, that's kind of silly. If you have the product but can't taste it, that's not going to sell the wine, so that's really not worth the effort. And the special event is just put in there to add, as long as we were doing it. I'm not sure that we would have put up the special events to do it, but we noticed, in your guidelines and rules that there has to be a benefit to the community. And so we came up with this a way of actually providing a benefit to the community to allow basically have the CUP allow for alcohol service there. I'm not really sure that, despite the comments of council and staff, that we could do what we want to do without amending the permit. So rather than taking that chance, we wanted to include that. And once again, that sort of puts out the flavor of the marketing to say, we are a place where you have an opportunity to come back tomorrow and buy the wine. You have a chance to come back tomorrow and sample the wine. So yes, it is part of a marketing effort, but it's also a way of creating that community benefit. And as I said in the...
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Okay.
My next question is on your hours. You're currently allowed to operate from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Why would you voluntarily give up hours of operation?
Once again, we're trying to make a smaller footprint so that we're not hitting the edges of that picture frame. We're trying to narrow it so that we don't want to do that. We only want.
But you understand that doesn't mean you're obligated to be open those hours. In fact, you're not now. So
once again, we're trying to narrow what we're allowed to do so that the town understands that we're not trying to take advantage of the town. We're not trying to turn it into a BevMo or something else. We're willing to make these concessions to be the size of that small rock and not the size of the whole picture.
And then on these events for nonprofits, so I'm involved in many nonprofits, so you're thinking that they would do it as appreciation event for big donors or as a fundraising event, or you don't know?
All of the above.
All of the above?
And the point where it's been successful before is where, in order to do that in many venues, there's a significant charge for that. If you do it in a restaurant or a bar or other things, there's all kinds of questions about how much it's going to cost to rent the facility, or you can go to some facilities that allow it, but it's not a really fun, environmentally beautiful place. So this basically allows those kinds of organizations to have a gathering in something that's aesthetically pretty, that they don't have to worry about getting permission in advance for a special event or whatever the town calls it. It's basically, here we are, we're open, we're available to you, And as long as you bring in your licensed caterer, or we'll hire one for you, depending upon the.
And how did you come up with 25? Because I see your legal occupancy is actually 90 in the store. So how did you limit it to 25?
Once again, we were narrow. We took arbitrary numbers, tried to narrow it significantly so that once again we weren't at the edges of the picture. We tried to keep it to the small rock in the same way that we're offering to limit the bottles and things like that on display, so that we're sure that we're well within those well below the edges of the frame.
It's all right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Brzezinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only other store that Napa Style serves wine in is the Yountville store?
Correct.
Yeah.
In fact, that's the only other store left now.
Other than Los Gatos?
Right.
Okay. And I noticed that at the Yountville store, there actually is Yountville, or a Napa Style cafe.
Correct.
I assume that it's an outdoor eating area adjacent to the
inside
business.
and outside.
Inside and out. What foods are proposed to be served when the wine tasting is taking place?
Whatever the licensed caterer would decide to serve, and obviously, I think we put in there that we would be willing to not have any foods prepared on premise. The caterer would have to bring them from outside, no extra heating elements, things along those lines, but basically it would be a complete catered event with no cooking on the premise.
Okay, so what differentiates this from a restaurant?
Well, it's a completely portable operation. A restaurant is not portable. In the Yountville location, we have a fully commercial stove. We have vents. We have all kinds of rules and regulations we have to live by because we're calling it a restaurant. Here, it's the same way as you'd have any catered event at someone's home or in someone's business or something along those lines. But there's no cooking. There's no permanent fixtures of any kind that would be used in preparing the catering event. Although there is a sink upstairs which could be used when needed, but it's not something that anybody would rely upon to do these events.
Yeah, the reason why I'm asking the question is I'm a little confused about the business plan at this point. I find Napa Style a very attractive downtown property, and we go there often, my wife and I. And as a matter of fact, I have tasted some of the product in the store, and last Christmas it sold us on some things that we sent to relatives. Okay, so it does happen. Okay. Now, from the perspective of what your new plan is, my concern is how we move this downstream, where now what is a successful, my assumption is a successful retail property begins to look more and more like a wine bar, and that seems to change the nature of what we've got there, even though perhaps the language of the CUP currently doesn't absolutely disallow, but it doesn't really talk to the issue of this.
Not to interrupt you, it doesn't disallow it, but once again, it's a granted privilege, and the CUP certainly doesn't allow for it. So that's why we're trying to change that. But we don't want to turn this into a wine bar. We don't want to turn this into a BevMo. We don't want to do that, and that's why we've offered up these self-imposed limitations to keep us from doing it, and to keep somebody who subsequently acquires the space from doing it as well. Because when our lease runs out, if it's not renewed, we don't want BevMo moving in there either, and we want the council to be able to say, BevMo, you can't move in there because the CUP we gave to Napa Style was so very narrow. There's no way you can do business with only displaying 120 bottles throughout the entire store.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just not in their repertoire, and they're not going to be interested. I can't imagine they'd be interested in something like that.
Well, I mean, it is an issue for me, and the question that the conditional use permit runs with the land, and so what you're doing is a priori attempting to constrain what this will eventually look like should it go to somebody else,
right?
And I don't know. I'm discomforted by the fact that I'm not really seeing the parameters within which you want to operate. I hear you saying we're attempting to shave off the edges so that it's the small rock, not the full picture.
Okay.
But that doesn't necessarily in and of itself contain this process or contain this attempt by a future tenant to move in, and within even the same framework, suddenly we have a wine bar on North Santa Cruz at your location.
Well, I think that I don't see how you could build, I don't see how, based upon the way the CUP is shaping up, if the council adopted it, that anyone could turn it into a wine bar. All you can do is wine sampling for a fee. Once again, we can say that you can only have 6. I think it says 6 1-ounce tastes a day. I think that was the 5 1-ounce tastes a day. So it would be almost impossible for anybody, unless they weren't interested in making money, to make a wine bar out of some place where you can only have 5 1-ounce tastes per day. It seems almost impossible to make a wine bar out of a place where you can only have 120 bottles on display, and half of those 60 are in the little tiny 200 square foot area, and 60 are spread throughout the store. I just don't see how you could build a wine bar or a BevMo or any other kind of thing other than a home store in that parameter. Plus, you've still got the existing CUP, which limits what you can do in there as well. So all this is doing is adding an additional privilege to the CUP, which that CUP would limit it from ever being a wine bar. The existing CUP would limit it from ever being a liquor retail store, because those kinds of stores don't sell the kinds of home goods that go in a formula retail store. And that's the primary thing. All we're doing is tweaking that CUP, not replacing it.
Okay, thank you.
Or all we're offering to do, or asking you to do.
Any other questions from council? Seeing none, I'd like to invite any member of the public who would like to speak on this matter to come forward at this time. If you want to fill out a card. Do we have any cards? No. Mr. Branch, you have 5 more minutes to discuss, add anything you may have left out, or rebut anything you've heard.
We've tried to carve it out as narrow as we can. And if we carve out much more, it's basically worthless. And it goes back to when I first looked at your alcohol rules and said, we can make this business plan fit within these rules. Now, the Planning Commission spent a lot amount of time on all the alcohol that's available in this community, and basically we don't need more. And if that's the case, then just put in your rules, we don't want any more alcohol applications. Don't waste our time. And in fact, even though we've lost 2 in the last couple months, we don't want any more. And I wouldn't have wasted anybody's time. But it doesn't say that. All it says is if you'd like an alcohol privilege, you have to fit within these parameters, and that's okay. And we fit not only within the parameters, we're in the small rock, and yet if that's not good enough, then I wish you'd rewrite your rules and just simply say what the rules are, because we followed the rules, we've made it narrower than the rules, we've offered accommodation upon accommodation, and if it's still not good enough, then the rules aren't conforming with the actual policy. So thank you very much. Thanks for everybody's attention.
Thank you, Mr. Branch. At this time, I'd like to close the public hearing and look to council for questions, discussion, or a motion. Vice Mayor.
It's a question for, I think, Ms. Mosley. Council recently approved what I'm going to call a high-end wine shop with tastings, and it's my recollection that the times that the tasting could occur within the opening hours were limited. Am I correct in that?
Correct. Their establishment was a little different in that they offered larger samples of a limited number of their supply, and it was more of a educational atmosphere. This would be in that somebody would come in and have the ability to sample only what they have available for the much more limited pours, more similar to what the French cellar used to do.
Follow-up? So then my question is, the proposed conditions that we have before us are the store is open from A to B hours, and they can no more than 1 ounce I forget, 5 1-ounce pours per customer per day. So if I go in there, I can get 5, or if somebody else goes in there, they can get 5 for all day long. Is that the same as, for example, the French cellar? They could do that for as long as the store was open?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to throw out some comments and thoughts that I have, and then see where council wants to go on this. And start with just a small item to the applicant, but big item to me. I am not inclined to want to change the current operating hours, which are 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., because I would like to encourage more retailers to be open in the evening hours in downtown, not to close off at 6. I mean, we just had, did you know, tonight talking about the special effort to have the holiday stroll, the shopper's stroll, and this store would not be able to participate in that if they went to the new hours of closing at 6. So that's just one thought that's important to me, separate from their application. I would not be opposed to selling bottles of wine in the store because of the name, and I think it's a small addition to their overall merchandise, and it's not like the wine cellar, and it's not like whatever the name of the shop is that's opening over on the boulevard, because those are totally devoted to the sale of wine. This is a whole different kind of a concept. I do have a lot of problems with the wine tasting because we have many places, grocery stores, drugstores. I think the car wash is selling wine. They're not doing tastings. They manage to move product without tastings. And if we say you can't effectively sell wine without tastings, then we're going to be getting a series of applications, I think, from Lenardi's and Safeway and CVS and so on, to be able to do the same thing. The private events, I like the idea of them using the store because it is a charming environment, making it available to nonprofits for fundraising, but I don't think that it's currently being proposed in a structured way that's effective either for the nonprofit. 25 guests, unless you have real high rollers, that's not going to generate a whole lot of income, especially when their occupancy allows them to go up to 90. And it seems to me that given what's available to other merchants who don't have a CUP, that there could be an addition to the CUP that is more vague and therefore more usable for both the store and for a nonprofit who would be trying to take advantage of it. And I don't know what that language is because that's really not my job here tonight. But so I have a lot of concerns about this, and I don't know where we want to go with it, but that's what I'm thinking right now.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to follow up with what the applicant was saying. He said, I looked at your alcohol rules and rewrite the rules, or, in other words, tell me what I need to do. And my feeling in listening to the Planning Commission is that they were struggling with a lot of issues. And they were struggling with whether or not they should have a new liquor license of any kind downtown, what they should do, what parameters they should put on wine tasting, what rules, if any, they should have on private parties, what rules, if any, with regard to the retail sale of liquor downtown. What about parking? They talked a lot about parking when you go from a retail store that doesn't have liquor to a retail store that does have liquor and or tastings and or private parties. We have very experienced, bright people on the Planning Commission, and my sense was that they were unable to answer these questions as it relates to this application, because we are in the process of rewriting our alcohol policy and creating an entertainment policy. We'll put entertainment aside for now. We are in the process of rewriting our alcohol policy, and it was this Planning Commission that in September had had the alcohol policy before it and wasn't able to come to any conclusion because they needed more information from staff. When the alcohol policy was then brought back to the Planning Commission in October, they didn't get additional information from staff, so they have now passed the issue up to us, the council, with no recommendations, but with a lot of questions. And the questions that they are passing up to us to resolve are actually overlap with the questions relating to this application. So what I see before us tonight are a lot of questions. And they aren't questions because the applicant is requesting anything bad or negative, but because they're raising issues problematic for Los Gatos downtown. They're raising issues that our Planning Commission and the Council have not yet had the opportunity to explore and resolve.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to follow up on Councilwoman Spector's comments. In watching the Planning Commission meeting, I agree that they were struggling with questions. Commissioner O'Donnell wanted the council to take a global approach to this question so that we could have ideas about how we were going to deal with downtown. We don't have those policies in place yet. There was a motion made by Commissioner Bourgeois to allow the private events and the wine sales, but not the tastings. That failed because there was a concern about intensification of parking, which we haven't talked about tonight, although it's addressed in our staff report. And then Commissioner Sayoc indicated that there were parts of the application that everyone liked. They liked the charity events, they liked the wine sales. There was concern with the cumulative impact, again, of parking. So ultimately, we got a recommendation for a 4-3 recommendation for denial, if I recall. Could have been more than that, but in any event. So I agree with Councilwoman Spector that there are concerns and that the council needs to provide direction globally. I don't know whether it's appropriate in this instance to have the applicant pay the price for how long it's taken the council and the Planning Commission to come up with policies that we wanted to get in place for a long time. So I, for one, just as this council person, I would strike the balance with Commissioner Bourgeois' original motion, which was to limit the tasting, then to address Councilperson McNutt's observation regarding the hours. I would propose changing the proposed condition from the hours from 9 to 6 to back to the original 9 to 9, except if there is a charity event happening, in which case the store would have to close at 6. I would also add an additional condition that it come back for review in a year to see how it's working out, and if by that time we have policies in place that make sense for other things, then it would make sense for that to be reviewed. But that's the direction that I would go.
Councilmember Brzezinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we're looking at a situation that is within our purview, because the reason why all new alcohol use comes to the council is because we consider this something that requires policy. And we are not in a situation right now to say we are just forbidding all new alcohol use in town. And if that was what the applicant heard, that's not accurate. Okay? What we're saying is that we are being circumspect about those times in which we allow. And what we're trying to do is make sure that those opportunities that we do allow new alcohol use to be included in a property is the concept of community impacts and community benefit. And I heard the applicant saying that there was an attempt to create community benefit by doing the charitable events, by not reaching the full extent of what could be done, as in some ways an encouragement to us to go ahead and approve. And my sense is I am not really comfortable with the full range that is being requested. I think that if we assume that a private business can offer its facilities for a charitable organization to hold an event within their premises, and it's within the time of their normal hours, which would be 9 o'clock at the evening, then I see no problem with that. I too have some difficulty assuming to eliminate 3 hours most days of the week, except for those times when you're having a private event. Although I heard that as kind of part of the carrot as well for us to make approval. As far as the wine sale, I'm not opposed to that, but I do think wine tasting takes us into another level. And I understand that there is a good commercial reason for doing that people wouldn't necessarily buy just with the label. But I'm seeing something here that starts to look a little different than the retail business that it is. And that's my concern with this. I would be more than happy to support the latter two. I wouldn't even put restrictions on the 501c3 or 501c6 or 8 or whichever one it was. I would say that's your right to hold these private events. It could be for the Chamber of Commerce. I see. It could be for the Chamber of Commerce. It could be for St. Mary's Church. It could be for whomever. But as far as I'm concerned, I think that the issue for me is the wine tasting, and it's wine tasting in this particular location in downtown. And once we come to the discussion of our revised alcohol policy adjoined with entertainment policy, then we may actually vet this in such a way that we go in a different direction. But right now, I'd hate to think that we have predetermined that there will be no more alcohol sale in the downtown until we come to that conclusion.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I listen to the other individuals here on the dais, my thoughts, first of all, I heard the Planning Commission a little differently than Ms. Jensen. I heard Mr. Bourgeois' motion being limited to an approval of the charitable events, and that when that failed, Ms. Sayoc, as part of the discussion of the motion that did pass 4-3, was that the component of this application with which she was most comfortable was the retail sale of room temperature beer and wine. I tend to agree with that. If I were inclined to approve any portion of this application, it would be the room temperature sale of beer and wine, realizing that this subject could very well be a component of our new alcohol policy. The aspect with which I am least comfortable, as I believe Mr. Przinski said, is the tastings, which I believe are taking us on a different path. And then the charitable events, I'm still not understanding why the establishment cannot just do it now. And I realize we asked staff this question over and over and over again before this hearing started. But assuming that the business can have closed-door charitable events, then I believe that that's how we should have them proceed, not as part of a new revised CUP.
Vice Mayor.
I'm going to try a motion just to see what happens. And my motion would be to approve the conditional use application. I'd make the findings that are contained in our attachment number 3, but I'd make the following changes to the conditions of approval, which appear pretty much at the end of our packet, Exhibit A, Attachment 5, and they follow the proposed ordinance for those of you that want to look. The proposed condition number 4, the hours, I would change that to be the current hours, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., except when there is a special event, in which case it shall close at 6. I would merge the tasting and charity event. I wouldn't make it a charity event. I recall from Planning Commission, and Mr. Branch is going to probably nod at me or just gesticulate if I'm incorrect, but that the Napa Style and South Coast Plaza had charity events, and you were using that as a model. Am I thinking of something different? I might be. That's correct. Okay. I see a way to limit tastings, which I'm not comfortable with happening from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., as we did with Artisan Wine Depot. And instead of calling out a charity event, call out an event, which may include a tasting, which would be limited to 24 events annually, which would be after hours, which would be an educational event, which would make sense to have it be limited to 25 guests. Then if it were a charitable event or whatever it was, they could do it differently. But I think I would take 6 and 7 and combine them into essentially an after-hours event, which could include a tasting or a charity event and would be limited to 24 events annually and a maximum of 25 guests. I would allow the retail sale that's indicated in my motion, and I would include in my motion a condition number 12, which would require that the CUP come back to the town council for a review after 1 year for compliance and or other issues raised by the approval. That's my motion.
Councilmember Spector.
Questions. First of all, I may be looking at the wrong attachment. I have Exhibit A of Attachment 5, which I have conditions of approval, and I don't see a 12. So am I looking at the wrong attachment?
I added wrong. I'm sorry. It would be 11.
All right.
My new one would be an additional condition, which would be for the year review. There's 10 listed now, but I would merge 6 and 7, so I guess it would be 10 ultimately.
And would the year review include a consideration or a review of these conditions of approval in light of a new alcohol policy, if we had one?
Yes.
All right.
Which I assume would also encompass the live entertainment condition if there's now an entertainment policy as well.
Well, I was going to second your motion till you went there.
Well, I can rescind that.
All right. Well, with that, I will second your motion.
We have a motion and a second. Comments? Councilmember McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. So I need to know the actual language of the merged 6 and 7. And as you scribble that together, I was playing around with some words here. If we called it private tasting events, does that take, it takes out the charitable thing and gets the tasting in there, but perhaps you have some language, but I need to hear it before we approve anything. Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Spector.
And while they're doing that, the challenge with charitable tasting events.
No charitable in there, no charitable.
Yeah, okay, no private tasting events is, as I understand it, these events may not be all tasting events.
That's the intention of the maker of the motion, to allow the option.
Okay. Thank you. That helps staff draft the language as we're working on it right now.
Councilmember Brzezinski.
And this is clarification for the maker of the motion. So if I understand the motion, the hours of the store 9 to 9, except for private events. And that's then a 6 o'clock close for the private event. Tastings take place in the private events. Wine and beer sales can take place without tasting throughout the day.
Correct, that's my intent.
Thank you.
The town attorney has draft.
We're going to take a shot at it at and hope that you can weigh in. So thinking of combining a maximum of 3 private tasting events are permitted per month with a maximum of 24 events annually. Events shall be limited from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. with a maximum of 25 guests per event, and stores shall be closed to regular retail operations during the private events. The events may be served by an ABC licensed caterer.
The first thing I heard was the use of the phrase private tasting event. I believe Ms. Prop said, unless I misheard that.
It was,
So
and if you
we
wanted
do
to
not
leave-
want it to be private tasting event. We want it to be private event, or I want it to be private event for my motion.
Can I provide some?
Hold on. Let me
Okay.
Go ahead. And what else?
So that was the first thing. The second thing was, if number 4, the hours of operation is changed to say 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., except when there's a private event, I had assumed that to mean it would be closed at 6 p.m. If you think we need the other language that you recited regarding the hours in the events, okay, I'll defer to you, but it seemed to me a little confusing.
I think it might be a little clearer if we keep the hours listed under number 4 to be 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily, and then just keep that the special events are limited to the hours of 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. and that it should be closed to the public at that time within that condition.
Okay, I just thought that that's fine. I just thought that Ms. Prop's language, I was having a little trouble following it.
So we can add that language as Mosley recommended in 4 and take it out of the new condition 6.
That would be fine with me.
Councilmember McNutt.
When they finish wordsmithing, I need to hear it one more time. Is there no way to actually type it up on the screen? No? This is more than just a word or two.
How about if we take a 5-minute recess? Thank you. Line.
So it might be possible to show my iPad screen on the screen, but it's also short enough it might work if we can try reading it first. I do also want to mention that the applicant has made a request to staff that this be continued and brought back if the council wants a chance to review the language in writing, which is often a common practice of this council, so we're not quote unquote designing from the dais. Nonetheless, to further the discussion and then let the council determine if they want to act tonight or continue, the language we've come up with so far is private events. Up to 3 private events are permitted per month with a maximum of 24 events annually. Private events are limited to a maximum of 25 guests per event. The events may be served by an ABC licensed caterer or other ABC licensed provider. And that's to provide the opportunity of tastings if that, by a winery if that was so chosen.
Is the maker of the motion satisfied with that language?
Yes and no. It doesn't indicate that wine tasting is allowed at the events.
It doesn't, since ABC licensed service would be allowed, it would be the caterer or a winery could do the pourings at the event, and it could be tastings or glasses. That would be dependent on the nature of the event.
I understand that, but I just think for purposes of having a CUP condition that's easily understood, that it would make sense to add that. And just for the record, well, let's see if the seconder agrees.
The seconder does agree.
Councilmember McNutt.
Mayor, I'm intrigued with the idea of continuing this so that we actually can see the language in context and think about it a little bit more, because I also, if we're given some time, maybe we could think about that 25 guests maximum, which again seems like a real arbitrary number to me and doesn't really make any sense. I know we have a motion on the floor right now, but I just wondered if we want to make the motion, would like to think about maybe continuing this so that we have everything in writing.
Councilmember Spector.
The seconder of the motion is not inclined to agree to a continuance.
Then we'll go to Councilmember Brzezinski. I believe you were.
I understand what the seconder of the motion feels, but in response to what was a request by the applicant for a continuance, we have traditionally allowed a continuance if requested.
Vice Mayor.
The maker of the motion is similarly not inclined to withdraw the motion in favor of a motion for continuance.
So we have a motion and a second on the table. Is there any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed?
I'm abstaining because I still haven't heard the final language, so I can't. That would be an abstention.
We were just trying to include the tasting language requested by the maker of the motion.
So from here, we will restate the motion and then we will vote again.
It would be the conditions of Exhibit A of Attachment 5 with item number 4 specified be 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily, except for private events. 6 and 7 would be combined as a new 6, which would be private events. Up to 3 private events are permitted per month with a maximum of 24 events annually. Private events are limited to a maximum of 25 guests per event and may include wine tastings. The events may be served by an ABC licensed caterer or other licensed ABC provider. And then we would be adding a new condition 11, calling for a 1-year review as specified by the maker of the motion, and we would draw that language from the motion.
The maker of the motion is satisfied with that language.
As is the seconder.
Councilmember Brzezinski.
Yes, and when, in item 4, when you indicated the hours of 9 to 9, and then you said
Except for
except
private.
for, but you didn't indicate hours for the exception.
Oh, thank you. Except for private events scheduled from 6 to 9 p.m.
That's the intent.
Agreed.
Councilmember McNett, are you satisfied with the language? So we have a motion and a second. We have language. We'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next public hearing is conditional use permit U-13-015. The project location is 115 North Santa Cruz Avenue. We're considering a request to modify an existing CUP for a restaurant with a separate bar, full liquor service, and outdoor seating to increase the permitted outdoor seating on a property zone C2 LHP. And we have a staff report.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'm going to be recusing myself for the perception of bias since my law firm represents the owner.
Thank you.
Thank you. The applicant is requesting to modify the conditional use permit for an existing restaurant with a separate bar and full liquor service. The applicant is requesting to locate 14 of their total permitted seats in an additional outdoor patio located to the north side of the structure. The seats will be relocated from existing permitted seating within the restaurant and may be relocated indoors during the winter or rainy seasons as needed. In addition, the applicant is requesting to place seats for waiting patrons on the front porch, which is not permitted under the current CUP. The applicant has spoken with the adjacent neighbors regarding any noise concerns they may have. No other changes are proposed as part of the proposed application. However, it does give staff an opportunity to clean up the CUP for the office use of the second floor that was included in the 2008 approval, but never vested by the property. The application was considered by the Planning Commission on October 23rd of this year. The Commission recommended approval of the application with the modification of condition number 4 requiring alcohol service in the new side patio to cease at 10 p.m. This concludes staff's report. We're here if you have any questions.
Questions of council for staff? Seeing none, I would like to invite the applicant to come forward. You have 10 minutes to speak.
Hi, my name is Dean DeVincenzi. I don't think this is going to take 10 minutes. I hope it doesn't. What law firm, when she says represents the owner, is that me or the landlord? Do we know? Okay.
Hoag, Fenton, Jones, and Appel.
What's that?
Hoag, Fenton. I don't know who they represent.
Me too. Miss Mosley said it perfect. We are just applying for some seats to be able to seat the, if you're facing the building, the right side. If anybody has walked by there or driven by there, and you all have been here for a long time, it's a pretty desirable outdoor area. So it's a major addition by subtraction, and what I mean by that is everybody wants to sit outside and really nobody wants to sit inside. So if we are allowed to seat, and which we have in the 2 years that we've been there, we were graciously allowed to seat out there, and with the understanding that we were going to move forward cleaning up the conditional use permit. So it's been pretty popular. I'm 100% for the stopping it at 10 o'clock on that side. The porch area is also very desirable. It's too hard to serve food out there, so that's not a big deal. But to be able to sit out there and wait for a table outside, which everybody wants to wait for a table outside, and nobody not nobody, but a lot of people do not want to sit inside. So it'd be a nice opportunity to be able to serve a cocktail to somebody outside while they're waiting for the table. And again, we can put a limitation on that to 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock. I would pray that we would still be serving cocktails to somebody waiting for a table at 9:30, but that's not really the case. So I don't really have much to add to this. So I'm just asking for a modification in the CUP.
Thank you, Mr. DeVincenzi. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak on this matter this evening? Seeing none, Mr. DeVincenzi, you have 5 more minutes if you need it. No, thank you. I'll look to council for discussion, a motion. Questions of staff? Mr. Brzezinski.
Just a point of order about closing the public hearing.
Oh, yes, the public hearing is closed. Thank you.
Yeah, just a clarification, the Planning Commission's recommendation was the 10 o'clock closure of alcohol service in the new patio area. Is that correct?
The original discussion from the Planning Commission was to cease seating out there at 10 p.m., but the final condition actually was worded to cease alcohol service at 10 p.m.
All right. And that is contained in our documents.
Correct.
Yeah. I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to move for approval on this conditional use permit application U13015 and make the required findings as presented in attachment 3 in our staff report and adopt the resolution attachment, that's attachment 4, to approve the conditional use permit with the modifications recommended by the Planning Commission.
Councilmember McNutt.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. Moving on to our next agenda item, which is a tree removal permit T13070. Oh. Almost. Now we can move on to our next agenda item, which is a tree removal permit T-13-070, project location 36 Peralta Avenue. And this is to consider an appeal of a planning commission decision denying the appeal of a tree removal permit on a property zoned R18. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, sorry. I'd like to remind the council that there is a desk item on this item. The Parks and Public Works Department received a tree removal permit application to remove a 38-inch Coast live oak. The property owner requested the removal of the oak tree based on structural damage to a detached garage that was believed to be caused by the tree. The tree is reported to be healthy and have good structure. The initial assessment by the arborist for the Parks and Public Works Department was that the tree was causing structural damage. As a result, the tree removal permit was approved. Subsequent to the approval, PPW was contacted by a concerned neighbor. The application was reevaluated, and it was determined that there was not enough conclusive evidence that the cracks in the garage floor were caused by the tree roots, and that the information provided was not sufficient to support removal of the tree. As a result, the town rescinded the approval, and the property owner appealed the decision. For the appeal, the town's consulting arborist conducted 2 site visits and prepared 2 reports that are summarized in your staff report. The arborist concluded after the second site visit that the roots of the tree have been causing damage to the garage floor and walls. The report provided several options or recommendations that included removal of the tree and several options for retention of the tree with or without reconstruction of the garage. The Planning Commission denied the appeal based on the finding that the information provided to determine feasibility of retention of the tree was not significant enough to remove a tree of this size and condition. The property owner appealed the decision of the Planning Commission and provided further site information showing the cost and difficulty of the 3 options provided by the town's consulting arborist for retention of the tree. They are provided in detail within your staff report. Staff recommends the Town Council uphold the decision of the Planning Commission and deny the appeal. Staff would like to apologize that the town's consulting arborist, Debbie Ellis, was unavailable for tonight's meeting. However, the Town Park Superintendent, Steve Regan, is here if any consultation is needed on that end.
Thank you, Ms. Mosley. Do we have any questions of staff? Seeing none, I'd like to call the appellant forward.
Oh, hi, everybody. Town Council, nice to meet you all. This is the back, the view from...
Can you please state your name for the record?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, name is Jack Boletto, live at 36 Peralta
Thank you.
Avenue. And this is the thing we'll be talking about for the next 10 minutes. That's a view from the backyard. The oak tree is on the left, right about here. And where we sleep is right inside the sliding glass window. Takes about 3 steps to get from the oak tree.
If we could ask the speaker to take the mic with him so it's being picked up on TV. The mic
sure.
comes out.
So it takes about 5 steps to get into the point where we're hopefully sleeping. But first, it strikes me, I don't know anybody in this whole world. I've been out in Santa Clara County since 1958. About a minute on my wife and I. We're both native Californians. She's from the South. I'm from San Francisco. I spent my time in San Francisco County, San Mateo County, and then came down to Santa Clara University in 1958. Marnie came up, joined. As a matter of fact, Cynthia Mertens is with me. She's a professor at Santa Clara University. And my wife, Marnie, actually came up and lived with Cynthia's parents in Palo Alto. And so we're related, which is why, partly why Cynthia's here. So we've been in the area, like I say, since '58, married almost 50 years, 3 daughters. 2 were born at Good Sam. They all went to either Los Gatos High or Saratoga High. So we're locals, I guess you'd say, somewhere between, halfway between Saratoga and Los Gatos at all times. I also went to Santa Clara and have some engineering degrees in electrical engineering. Like a lot of people in the Valley, started at Fairchild and stayed in the semiconductor industry for years. Founded and ran several companies on my own, and then hopped the fence into venture capital in 1983. And as a matter of fact, I'm still working and still manage 6 LLCs, which have investments in about 13 companies here and there. So we're still working. My office is in the Park Vista building at 2 North Santa Cruz Avenue, right on top of Cover Story. So when the chance to buy this house came up, here I am just about heaven, because it's a 3-block walk downhill to my office from this house. And we had to leave Los Saratoga anyway. That was a 2-story house, and after several knee surgeries and replacement knees, we're both in our 70s, so it was time to move along and find a 1-story house. So that's a little background, and this place is absolutely perfect. We've always loved Los Gatos. We first lived here in 1975 up on Hillbrook Drive. Wish I'd have kept that one. And so this has always kind of been our first love, and the job you folks have done keeping the town to be a spectacular place to live is just pretty amazing. It's way better than it was in 1975. Of course, that was 40 years ago, so who goes back that far? So this is the place to live. We love it. And so as far as background, that's how that goes. We were surprised after moving in to find that even though we've only been there 3 years, the slab in the garage started cracking. We called a well-known arborist here called Trees 360. It's a fellow named Strawn Edwards. He does all of Laurinconatus trees, a pretty well-known guy. Came out, he met with the town arborist, works for the city, and together they concluded, and Strawn, by the way, had been watching this tree for a while and noticed a change over about 5 years where he could see the tree. Let me just show something here. The tree is right up, and down at the dirt level, it's touching and encroaching on that back wall. So at first, we were just going to have Strawn do a trim, and then we took a closer look, went inside, and then found that after we excavated, sorry for I thought this was so clever to show how big that root is. It looks like we discovered coffee mugs. But what that is, this is about an 8-inch root right here coming through from the back. So that tree, as people have said, apparently is very healthy, and that root, there's probably 4 buttress roots like that around the tree. Some of the options that were thrown out by the consulting arborist Debbie. All of them concluded to not ever sever that root. That would probably kill the tree, and in fact, the tree might fall backwards towards the back fence. So that'd be a bad idea. So we went by the rules, went by the book, looked up the regulations, went and got a permit, did everything right. Waited about a month. Had the same arborist, Strawn Edwards, come back out to do the work. And actually, he asked if he could use the driveway behind the back fence as opposed to my driveway, because it'd be easier to get to the tree. And I said, well, you have to ask the people who live at that house back there. I said, still haven't met them, but you have to ask them. So he went around and knocked on the front door, and it turned out to be Miss Decker. And nobody in the town, apparently nobody in the area knew about the permit. So trucks came screaming up pretty quick. Rob Mulder, the town arborist, came out, asked if, this is on a Tuesday, and asked if I would wait until Friday, even though he had a permit, would I wait until his boss, Steve, got off sick leave, because there must have been some big misunderstanding, and would you mind waiting? So we agreed, okay, we'll wait till Friday till Steve gets here. I have our permit. We played by the books, no tricks on our part. Well, Friday comes, Steve's still not there. Then he asked if we could wait. Is that 3 minutes left out of the 10? Okay, well, so on Monday, Steve came back to work and rescinded the permit. So that's about the time when I asked Cynthia Mertens to come help me, because it was pretty obvious that there's some legal issues that I don't completely understand. Since we had the permit, we're doing everything by the book, and all of a sudden it's been rescinded. So sorry about that.
I'll talk quickly. I'm Cynthia Mertens, professor at Santa Clara University, and I am here because I am Marnie Boletto's cousin. This is not what I usually do. I'm not going to go through what we covered in our appeal, because that's in your packet and before you. But the options at this point are to either remove the tree, which is expressly permitted because it is doing structural damage, which is what all the arborists have concluded, or keep the tree and do some construction with respect to the garage. And you've got in your packet again the estimates that following the consulting arborist's recommendations would cost approximately $58,000. If we were to move the garage forward, it would cost approximately $45,000. And those reports are in your packet, so I won't dwell on that. Or we can leave the situation as it is. If we leave the tree and the garage as it is, it's going to obviously create some additional structural damage. And the arborists, both Deborah Ellis and Strawn Edwards, have said that these trees grow quickly in a growth spurt season. I believe it was Deborah Ellis said it could expand several inches. The roots could grow and continue to damage the garage. If we keep it as it is, there will be further damage to the garage. It could potentially extend to the foundation of the house, the way the tree grows. And of course, it could create a hazardous situation since it is a very old tree. We did get an estimate that it's between 100 and 150 years old. To have us keep the tree as it is and to keep the garage in its present situation, in my opinion, would be unfair and inappropriate, not to mention the fact that there are liabilities that might come with it. The tree will not, it's in the back of the property, and from the street you really won't miss the tree. We're not in favor of cutting down trees. I don't think anybody here would advocate that, and we like the policy of Los Gatos to maintain trees and to make sure that the stringent conditions are met. But the town arborist is the main expert. The arborists that were consulted by us were also experts, and we believe that their opinions should be followed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions of council, Vice Mayor?
I think this is for Mr. Boletto. I have a couple, if I may. Sure. My first question is just to make sure that I understand what you said here tonight and what's appearing in the various arborist reports, is that the tree is unquestionably healthy. Is that correct?
I would say so. Well,
okay.
We think so.
Okay.
With oak trees, you never know.
So it's a healthy, it is a healthy 100 to 150-year-old tree.
It's that old, yeah.
Okay. The pictures that you're putting up on the screen, when were they taken?
Well, this was taken last week.
I can't see what you're holding up unless you put them on the screen.
They're all recent.
Okay, so can you stop at that one, please? Can you just keep that one up for me, please? That is taken last week?
Yeah, that was last
Correct? So that's depicting the tree as it now appears? And there's several cuts in that tree. Does that represent trimming that has been done since the permit was rescinded?
Yes.
Mr. Boletto, could you please use the microphone when you answer?
And percentage-wise, are you able to tell me what percentage of the tree you've taken out after the permit was rescinded?
We had the town arborist there with the trimmer, and he approved limb by limb, so I guess you should ask him. He was Rob Molden. He knows 25% is the maximum, and I think that's what he.
Okay, I'll ask him. Was any trimming done after the town arborist was not present?
No.
Okay. One final question. As I understand it, you're contending that the damage is, although you showed a picture of the trunk of the tree near the garage wall, you're contending that the damage is to the cement slab in the garage, correct?
Slab and the walls are starting to contort.
Okay, but there's no damage currently to the wall?
Well, except that it's contorting.
Okay. And your cement slab is how old?
Well, there was a permit in 1951, so probably 62 years old.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Few factual questions. As I understand what you said, you purchased the property, the home, in 2010? Is that what you said?
I think we moved in, let me think here. Yeah, I think it was 2010 when we moved in.
All right. And then after you moved in, did you make any remodeling or modifications to the home or the carport garage?
Only internal.
I'm sorry?
We only modified internal. We did a laundry room and a two bathrooms and nothing outside.
And then I think you said, and it may even be in the staff report, that there was somebody, was it Barry Coate, who had been watching the tree over some period of time?
Strawn Edwards, it's called Trees 360 is the name of his company.
Do you know why he was watching this tree over a long period or some period of time?
I think it was just a few years, and I don't know why.
All right.
But his report, which was done with Rob Molden, which got the permit in the first place, discusses that he's seen movement. And also Debbie, the town arborist, talked about you'll hit a rapid growth phase in an oak. Yeah.
So, well, let me back up a little bit then. What is the name of the person who had been watching the tree over time?
His firm is Trees 360. His name is Strawn Edwards.
All right, and then, so do you know what he saw and when he saw it?
No, but his report is it's in the record.
When you purchased the home in 2010, did you see any issues relating to the tree and your carport?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Mr. Belletto, I thought I had heard you say in your earlier presentation that Mr. Edwards was someone that was hired by you. Is that correct?
That's right.
So he wasn't independently watching the tree. You hired him to come and look at the tree vis-a-vis your garage. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, but he was familiar with the tree.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Belletto, I have a couple questions for you.
Yes.
Why did you choose to trim the tree in between both times that you applied for the tree removal permits?
Well, a few things happened. Two major events regarding oak trees. I was in a delay period for about 3 months because we had to gather up all this cost data for the planning, well, for you folks. When the Planning Commission said to go evaluate these different things. And in that period, we have some photos here. The Willow Glen tree came down, and I went over to it. That was also a 150-year-old tree, something like that, just been inspected recently, and at the Frank Bramhall Park. And this, we have some other photos. It wiped out 5 cars. One person was trapped in a car for about 2 hours. The other half of the tree went the other way, and just about took out a couple of 49ers who were learning how to lawn bowl for a charity event. And then I think about a week later, the young girl from UC Santa Cruz got killed. These are both with oak trees. That was up at Frank Camp Tawanga. And I was sitting there thinking of all this time while we're sitting around waiting to see what happens here. And just to jump the story a little bit, should I show that? We had 2 houses for the last 30 years. The second was up in Clear Lake, Clear Lake, California, if you know where that is. So this house was on the lake, big oak tree between our house and the other one. I sold it 2 weeks ago, and 2 days later, they had a 65-mile-an-hour windstorm up in Clear Lake, and that's what happened to that oak tree. So these things don't happen once in a blue moon. They do, in fact, crack. You know, lucky, that's our bedroom was right in there, except that we sold it, and the 2 days later is when the windstorm hit. But yeah, these trees go down a lot. I think they call them widowmakers, right? Because they look real healthy right up until the point where they don't. And matter of fact, on that, the quotes from the sheriff and the arborist for both those trees said everything looked fine, even inspecting them after they fell. They can't figure out any idea why they fell.
My other question pertains to when you purchased the home, I think it was 2010 or 11, and they did probably some kind of a property inspection or whatnot. Were there any type of comments about the tree and its proximity to the foundation of the garage or the garage slab being cracked or anything at the time you purchased the home?
Cracks, there were small cracks, the kind of thing you see on anything that old. But then about the time we had Strawn come in, it just became obvious the cracks were getting bigger. But even so, Miss Ellis couldn't the arborist that the town hired, well, still couldn't see the light there, so that's why we did the excavation. We made about a 10-foot trench starting at the tree and then going out this way. That's that first one I put up. That's a real healthy route, going every which way. This branch seems to be going off towards the house, so somewhere along here that's going to be over by the house foundation too, I would think.
All right, thank you. Any further questions of council? Seeing none, I'd like to invite the public to fill out speaker cards if you'd like to speak on this matter. The first speaker I have, would you please approach the podium, is Mark Wainwright. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Town Council. My name is Mark Wainwright. I live at 32 Peralta Avenue. I've lived there since 1982.
Mr. Wainwright, can you pull the microphone closer to your...
Certainly.
Well, you don't have to hold it, but if you could just pull it closer.
In 1982, when we arrived, the subject tree in the backyard of the property next to us was very large indeed. Of course, it's grown a bit over time, but there's absolutely no sense that it was a small tree. I think at one point in the 126 pages of data pertaining to this matter, there was a comment that the tree might have only been 40 years old. I stand by my original comments at the Planning Commission hearing from August 28th, but I'd like to note a few additional things. The appellant has expressed some concern about the safety of his property and the limbs falling on his house. And 3 years ago, when the appellants purchased the property, the tree was there with large limbs, and the limbs overhung the house. That's a condition that hasn't changed in 3 years. I'd also like to note that with the exception of the trees in the town's right-of-way between the sidewalk and the street, this is the only tree on the property. Let me make a general comment about the nature of having large, pardon me, of having large trees in a neighborhood. Almost everybody enjoys having mature, large trees. They add a lot to a neighborhood. Not everybody enjoys owning them because they require a certain amount of responsibility. They need to be maintained on a regular basis, and when you buy a property with a large house, one needs to undertake the purchase with knowing that there's a responsibility to maintain the tree. Thank you.
We have a question for you.
Mr. Wainwright, you've heard the appellant discuss the fact that the roots of the tree are, ruining or destructing the carport cement floor. What is your input on that?
Well, I had some feedback from neighbors who lived there before the appellants, and my understanding is that they remember that the concrete slab in the carport was cracked some time ago. I think that one of them may speak to that here. I did go back there, and I have a vague recollection that the concrete was broken. And I also, in our property next door, the concrete, which is not a slab, the concrete of the foundation has cracked. So I think over the course of the time, this is something that happens rather naturally.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wainwright. Next speaker is Donna Mattier.
I know I'm going to get called out on this, so I'll just hold it. I'm Donna Mattier. I apologize for the voice. I probably talked too much over Thanksgiving. We moved here about 1.5 years ago, And one of the things that drew us to the area was the natural beauty of Los Gatos. Certainly the trees are a part of this. And we had the opportunity to live on Glen Ridge Avenue, 36 Glen Ridge, right across the street from this glorious, beautiful tree in this wonderful neighborhood. And we lived there for about a year. And you know, for me, I look at a tree like that, and it feels like part of the neighborhood. And it's something that we all enjoy. It's something that adds value to the neighborhood. And one of the things that I learned living on Glen Ridge is that Glen Ridge, like many, probably there's a number of streets like this, it is kind of an ambassador street for Los Gatos. We get a lot of traffic on Glen Ridge. People who come to see this historic homes. It really says a lot about Los Gatos and its commitment to the natural beauty. And I think this is a town that, you know, I would love to see the enactment of very strong laws that support the natural beauty of this town. The town I came from, not nearly as beautiful, but you couldn't just cut a branch. The pictures that I saw up there is not the tree I looked out upon for the past year. It breaks my heart, really, to see what has even been done since we moved out of the house. We recently purchased a home on Statia. This is a home that is surrounded by trees. We decided to make that commitment. There were 10 bidders. The realtors told us, you know what? It's the trees. That's what bid that house up by nearly $200,000. There's a big value, I think, to this area that comes from the trees, not just the natural beauty, but I think there's a lot more to this. And so I think, you know, I would just love to see a town like Los Gatos. It's the most beautiful town that I have seen. I've lived a lot of places. I would just love to see the strongest commitment to the natural beauty, to the trees of this town. And when people take on a home, please, let's make that commitment to preserve the trees when you're taking on a home. Who knows how long certain residents will be there, but those trees, I think, contribute to this town in annuity for a long, long time. And it'd be interesting to put a value on that. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, Mary Bagatellos.
Hi, I'm Mary Bagatellos, and I came down because I had been talking to my neighbors, and I used to live at 36 Peralta from 1991 until 2001, and so I was the resident of the house when it was a carport, open walls. It had, the back was very wobbly. It basically leaked. It was a falling down carport. And the house, when I moved, was sold as a tear down. So of course, as usual, the little houses in Los Gatos aren't torn down, and they're sort of fixed up. And in fact, when I lived there, you know, I had the problem of some of my things in the carport getting wet, and I put in some hooks, and I hung plywood panels all along the walls, and there began the garage. So the garage was never really a garage. It was a carport that really wasn't much. And it was in terrible shape at the time. You know, the cement was not good. It was cracking, lifting, and, you know, not properly done. It was a very old construction. And basically, you know, I always loved that tree. I thought it was a wonderful tree. You know, it has an incredible perspective for the 4 houses that surround it. It's on one corner of the property, but the houses on each corner, you know, have a tremendous perspective of it. And certainly that carport morphed over time. The tree was there, and I really think it was a heritage tree, and it still continues to be a heritage tree. So that was what I wanted to share. I do have a picture of it from 1994 that I don't know if this is viewable, but it's a little bit glossy, so can you see that? Maybe if it were tilted. So that's how it looked in '94, and it, you know, of course, with the regular maintenance and things like that, it's changed. And so at that time, it was a very big tree. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question.
Just so I can keep the chronology here, you sold it when?
I was a renter at that time, and I lived there from 1991 till 2001. And when we bought a house, we moved from that property.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Our next speaker is Julie Winters.
Hi there, my name's Julie Winters and I live at 92 Fairview Plaza. And I have been visiting this property since for the last 15, 20 years. I've known Mary Bagatellos and I knew the previous owners. In fact, I spent many nights in the new little house. I used to dog sit and house sit and babysit. And I never felt once threatened by that tree. It's a beautiful tree. It used to have a beautiful umbrella, which has been destroyed now. The umbrella was a far-reaching, just a lovely shape. And I'm afraid that by keeping hacking away at this tree, it will actually damage the tree. Because, as you know, oak trees are kind of, when they grow, they grow in a way where they center themselves. So by hacking away at it, you throw things off, and it's gonna probably grow again. But anyway, so I think it would be a real shame to have this tree cut. And also, I think that it seems to me that someone is looking for a reason to cut this tree down. In that, I think there might be some other ways to remedy the situation where you wouldn't have to cut it down. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Cynthia Mertens. Okay. Our next speaker would be Lee Quintana.
Lee Quintana, 5 Palm Avenue. After reading the staff report, I came up with several areas of conclusions. First, was conclusions that were based on information that was in the staff report, that this was a very healthy tree and apparently has not been affected by the existing garage pad, and that the cracks in the garage floor are the result of both the tree roots and how the pad was constructed in the first place. There's information that is available but was not in the staff report. The zoning code requires off-street parking, but it does not require that parking be in a garage. The house to the left of 36 Peralta does not have a garage and has its parking off of Peralta on a parking pad. While the remaining houses on Peralta have detached garages, 2 of them at 4 o'clock this afternoon were tandem parked, and one of them had the garage blocked so that it was required that it be tandem parked. And lastly, the house at 36 Peralta has a driveway that has ample space for tandem parking. There's also information that I found was not in the staff report and was not available. And these are sort of questions about how much damage has been done to the structure of the garage. Is it currently a hazard? Or is this something that will occur over time? And if so, how long will it take the oak roots to actually damage the structure to the point where it becomes hazardous? Thirdly, The costs were estimated in the staff report for not removing the tree and rebuilding the garage, but there was no comparison for the cost of removing the tree and rebuilding the garage. And we shouldn't be basing the life of a tree or saving a tree based solely on cost. Also, I didn't think that there were several alternatives that didn't seem to be considered: keeping the garage and keeping the tree and removing the garage above the pad, or removing the pad along with removing the structure of the garage as long as it didn't damage the roots of the tree any farther, and to tandem park the cars in the driveway. This is not something, not all the houses in this area have garages. Many are tandem parked.
Thank you.
Almost got to the end.
Our next speaker is Sandy Decker.
Good evening, Council. I'm Sandy Decker, and I live at 45 Glen Ridge. This is the tree in question in 1945. It's situated as it is today, directly behind our house, and visible throughout the Glen Ridge area. I'm sure you all drove up there. You can see it from Pennsylvania and Hernandez. As you can see, this tree was mature in 1945, which would make it 68 years old when this picture was taken. There's no evidence of a garage in question. The tree was there and thriving 70 years before the unreinforced slab of concrete was poured for a makeshift carport. That tree has been standing within this community for well over 100 years. The tree is rated by the arborist report that you have as an 85 out of 100 on the condition, preservation, and suitability rating. 4 out of 5 recommendations are to keep the tree and modify the structure. The most logical would be the 4th option in the staff report, which says, quote, keep the oak tree, carefully demolish the existing garage in order to protect the oak roots, elevate the garage floor over the roots, which could be done easily now that the tree has been severely cut back by the applicant. This solution would also solve the existing drainage problem with the house because the garage is so far below the street level. There would be no need to move the structure on the lot. As I stated in my letter to you, this tree could be destroyed due to a policy that expects our arborist to choose between their urban forest expertise and making structural decisions they're not qualified to do. I'm told that PPW permit process has been changed due to this tree removal application, and a structural expert will be required before a determination like this can occur again. However, please don't let this tree be sacrificed in the interim. This heritage oak has regained a little of its canopy, and it's trying to leaf back out after being severely cut back by the applicant, as you saw in my report. While we debate tonight, thousands of trees are dying from disease, global weather changes, and development, both rural and urban in California. These trees are air-purifying, gathering places for complete and thriving ecosystems. How can we allow this tree to be cut to the ground and die when there is language in our town code and general plan to protect this lofty giant? Please weigh your options. Thank you in advance for a decision not to cut down this tree.
Thank you. Are there any other people who wish to speak on this matter this evening? One more card. Please come forward.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jeremy Osborne. I live at 1324 Dale Avenue in San Jose. I've worked for the Boletos in the past. I'm the contractor who submitted the bids, the estimates for the work involved. And just want to quickly answer or sort of refute the comments here that unreinforced concrete is inherently weak. It is certainly true that it's better to build with reinforced concrete. It's basically standard practice now, but unreinforced concrete exists in our town, in our country, across the world, and structures have stood for centuries without falling apart. Something has to cause the concrete to crack and lift and separate like it did. In this case, it is most certainly the tree. The tree is right up against the garage. So I'd just like to sort of clarify that. There is no other cause here. And if you have any other questions about the estimates or the work involved, certainly the owner has tried to come up with some alternative solutions as well. None of them are great. All of them present a lot of trade-offs that don't really benefit the owner and cost a lot of money, and really don't, certainly don't, they basically make things worse, in my opinion, so.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers on this matter? Seeing none, the appellant has 5 minutes to come up and
Thank you, Mayor and council members. The reference to butchering of the tree is an overstatement, in my opinion. This trimming was done under the supervision of the town arborist. It was done because most of the weight of the limbs, most of the weight of the tree was in these huge limbs that were overhanging the property. And because the tree is 15 feet from the bedroom, these limbs did cause the Bolettos concern. So the trimming was done properly, it was done under the supervision of an arborist, and it was done by an arborist. So I believe that the reference to the butchering of the tree is inappropriate in this case. Next, in terms of the legality of the Planning Commission's decision, it was a 3-2 decision. And as Commissioner O'Donnell stated, the only testimony we have from credible witnesses, that is to say in this case experts, is that there is no question that the roots are causing the damage. Now, if you even if you believe certain things could be done that might defer further damage, that is not within our purview. It seems to me we either have to find evidence that the recommendation of the staff is not supported by the evidence, or it is. And if it is, and I've heard no evidence to the contrary, then we have to grant the appeal. And the extraneous evidence that was brought in was based on conjecture. What is it that they could do to perhaps save this tree? The Bolettos are not out to just simply kill the tree. That is not their goal. They want to simply protect their property. The town ordinance specifically states that if physical structures are being damaged by a tree, that is one of the grounds for the tree's removal. In this case, the structural damage is irrefutable. It's there. Everybody, all the arborists have testified that this tree is causing the damage to the physical structure of the garage. So, in light of the stringent, and we support the fact that the town has very stringent requirements before a tree can be taken down. Those of us who have been born and raised in this area love Los Gatos for its beauty. And I'm certainly one of those. I love coming to Los Gatos. I come here frequently to eat, and it's a beautiful, beautiful town. But the reality is that this tree is causing structural damage. The reference to the fact that it's healthy, we agree that this tree is healthy. The problem we have is that we don't know what the potential liabilities could be with respect to the tree. And I'm just taking a couple of quotes here. You saw these pictures earlier, but this was the San Jose City Attorney, Rick Doyle, said, an inspection of the Willow Street Frank Bramall Park tree after it fell showed no noticeable damage or decay to the wood. You can't tell that a tree is not going to fall simply because it appears healthy. Secondly, and this was the statement by the sheriff up at near Camp Tawanga, there was nothing to indicate that there was anything wrong with this tree. Even to look at the existing tree trunk, there is still nothing wrong. So we agree this tree is healthy. It looks healthy. It seems to be sound structurally. The problem is we're not sure what the potential is for it to cause damage, for it to fall, and furthermore, it is unequivocally causing damage to the physical structure and therefore comes within the town ordinance, which says that a tree removal permit can be granted if a tree is causing structural damage. So we agree there's tremendous value in keeping the trees. We could just maintain the situation as it is, taking the risk for both liability and further damage to the structure, which is what will happen if the tree is not removed. And I believe that we should listen to the experts, and I appreciate the fact that the neighbors who testified are very emotional about this tree. I can understand the fact that they're very emotional about this tree, but they are not the experts. The experts are the ones who have examined this tree, who have examined the garage, who have given us the estimates, and I believe that those are the individuals that the council should listen to in this case. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you. Ms. Mertens, I am looking at 29100990. And I'm assuming that when you make reference to our ordinances, that is the ordinance to which you're making reference?
My ability to remember numbers is 0, as my students will tell you, but I believe that's right.
Well, what I'm looking for is you have made reference to the basis or bases for the town allowing for tree removal.
Yes.
And again, I am assuming that you're looking at this code section.
Yes.
And if you could direct me to the subsection to which you're making reference, because I haven't been able to find it.
Okay, I believe it is. Let me see if I can find it quickly here. I have the 126-page packet as well. Hold on. I believe it's this first section of that. All my tree reports. It's also cited in the staff report, isn't it? I think Marnie can probably give it to us very quickly. Is that all right?
You're looking for attachment 3?
Yeah. Attachment
Should be
3.
located right after the verbatim minutes.
I have exhibit 2, and you're saying it's the next one. I am sorry, it's not coming immediately to the top of my pile, but I'm sure I'll be able to find it momentarily. I will get some assistance from the planner here. That's it. It is number 1, where it says the condition of the tree, it says each application for a tree removal permit required by this division shall be reviewed using the following criteria. The condition of the tree or trees with respect to disease, imminent danger of falling or structural failure, proximity to existing or proposed structures based on a report from a certified arborist, structural damage to a building or a public nuisance caused by a tree. And the structural damage to a building is the one that we were talking about here, as well as, of course, the proximity to an existing structure.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Brzezinski.
Well, I was actually going to point out it was attachment 3 for Councilmember Spector. I have a question for you related to the issue of risk, the issue of risk,
Yes.
and that oak trees are notorious for spontaneously falling.
Yes.
I had actually an experience right out behind the police department once upon a time. I was walking my dog. I was in the parking lot of the library, and there was a big oak tree outside the police chief's office, and all of a sudden I heard this crack, and the thing just fell, into. One side going into the captain's office, the other side landing on the side of the hill. So it was quite a surprise, quite an interesting experience. I do know that that is the case. But to use that as then the example that says that these trees can fall at any time, if you were really trying to make the case against risk, then you'd say you'd have to take out all oak trees. And I think unfortunately, that's probably an illogic, because we are, in effect, we're living with the risk of the trees that we have on our property. I have 3 very tall Doug firs. We keep them appropriately trimmed, because we know that there's some risk. But in some ways, that's a risk we take. So that's my issue with the comments related to the oak tree being inherently dangerous. But I would like to talk to you about the question of the item that you're mentioning, attachment 3, item 1, in the required standards. I think you appropriately point out that structural damage is cause for tree removal, as is stated. And I do believe that was, I would assume that was the case in which our town arborist, found it appropriate to issue the permit. But I think the question is, are all structures equal? And that would be the issue for me. Are all structures of equal weight, equal value, when you're making this determination? I want to throw that out as an issue to be considered as we're looking at this particular factor. I also know that in the Planning Commission's decision, I believe it was Commissioner Bourgeois who focused on condition 2 regarding preservation, preventative measures, and routine maintenance as methodologies that could be used to mitigate the damage that would be done, and those yet needed to be explored, and they hadn't yet been explored. I think that was really the direction of his recommendation. So I appreciate what you're saying, okay, but I think it's really, for us, it's a very difficult situation to in any way draw just an absolute fine line when it comes to what this language says in relationship to the proposal in front of us.
Shall I respond? First, I agree with you that the tree, we can't live in fear of trees, or all trees would be cut down. The fact is that this tree is a few steps from their bedroom, and this is on a very small substandard lot. And so the possibility of something happening, should it happen, the possibility of it actually doing damage to a person is much greater, I think, than the location of other trees. Obviously, the trees falling that we've shown and the tree that you just described could have caused substantial injury. And I don't believe anyone is advocating cutting down trees because we're afraid that they might someday fall. It is very close to their bedroom, so that's one factor to consider, and one factor that they're very concerned about. But secondly, in terms of are all structures equal, the answer is clearly no. Not all structures are equal. However, the Bolettos do have a garage on their structure. They would like to use their garage. I realize they could take down the garage and park without shelter for their car, but I believe that most people would like to have a garage, and certainly are entitled to it if that's what they purchased when they purchased the house. But not all structures are created equal. I would certainly agree with that. And I think that addressed your basic points. Did I miss one? No, okay. Oh, what Commissioner, is it Bourgeois? Right. He did talk about what perhaps could be done in terms of preventing having to take down this tree, and that's what caused Mr. Boletto to get the estimates from the contractor, Jeremy, from whom you just heard, and we found that moving the garage or even raising it and putting steel plates over the roots, which was one of the recommendations, those kinds of things are going to be incredibly expensive and really not worth doing.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me follow up on Mr. Przinski's comments and questions. So I'm looking at the code section. I'm looking at subsection 1, which we've all decided is the one that you're looking at. So we have, and I've chopped it down, the condition of the tree with respect to structural damage to a building caused by a tree. And so I've tried to get rid of all of the words that don't apply. And then it starts out by saying that this division shall be reviewed by using the following following criteria, and then we went into what I just said about subsection 1. So would it be your position that, and this is why it circles back to Mr. Przynski, if you have any damage to a structure, that a heritage tree that appears to be very healthy, very large, and very old should be torn down?
No, and that's obviously not my position, and I don't believe it's the Boletto's position. However, it is a factor that has to be considered and can be considered under the ordinance, and there is structural damage, as it's been proven, to this particular structure, and it is the only garage on the property, and therefore I think that this should be taken into consideration. I am not saying that in every single case you should chop down a heritage oak because there's some structural damage. This is substantial. It's going to continue to grow, as Deborah Ellis stated, and as Strom Edwards stated. It's going to continue to cause damage in the next 3 to 5 years, depending on the growth spurts, according to Deborah Ellis. Much more substantial damage could be done.
But we're talking about, and I'm looking at one of the exhibits, I'm assuming it's one of your appellant's exhibits. I'm looking at the cracks in the garage floor, and what I hear you saying is that this kind of tree under our ordinance should be destroyed when there are cracks in the garage floor.
I'm saying that it's causing this garage to become structurally unsound. The outside wall by the tree has curved, and the concrete is obviously cracking.
So the garage is becoming structurally unsound because
Yes.
of these factors. All right, thank you.
Seeing no further questions from council, the public hearing is now officially closed, and I would like to defer to council with your questions, discussion, motions. Vice Mayor.
I had a question for the arborist who's with us tonight. Can you answer the question of what percentage of the tree was taken down post rescission of the permit?
I'm Steve Regan, the Public Works Superintendent. I believe it was 25%, right at the limit, under the guidance of our town arborist, Rob Molden.
Is there any kind of report there or anything, or are you just relying on what Mr. Bolden told you?
Relying on Mr. Molden told me.
Okay. Thank you. And Mr. Mayor, if I may, I have another question. It's a different subject.
Please.
I may regret this, so I'm going to apologize in advance for asking the geeky lawyer question of Ms. Prop. 29.10.0990, subsection 1. I spent a lot of time reading it. I think it's not well written. But if you look at that subsection, which is one of 9, and we have 9 criteria to follow, not just 1, it starts out with the condition of the tree or trees with respect to disease, imminent danger of falling, or structural failure. So if I look at all the rest of the paragraphs, I would take that as that's the primary thing we're looking at, the condition of the tree with respect to disease. If I was breaking out structural damage, etc., I'd put a semicolon, or I'd do something, or I'd do another paragraph. So that may be reaching in terms of how this is written, but I read it as what structural damage could be caused by a diseased tree is a fair reading. Am I getting that wrong, or do I break out the clause structural damage?
I think, as evidenced by several readings and interpretation, including from Council Member Spector, is that there's several ways to read this, and for its lack of punctuation, according to the town code, it was adopted sometime in August of 2003. So it's been on the books for a long time. And in its current structure. So we'll defer to the council on how you interpret it, but certainly the interpretation that Councilmember Spector read it as, I think, and I'll take some words, and hopefully she'll correct me if I'm inaccurate, but it was the reading that she suggested is that it isn't limited to disease, imminent danger, or structural failure. It reads as if it could be the condition of the tree or trees with respect to, and it's any of the following, I believe was her interpretation. But you are correct, is that you do have to look at subsection 1 through 9 and look at all of those as applicable. One doesn't seem to stand on its own.
Thank you.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to do some things out of order. So I disclose that I visited the property and I met with Ms. Mertens. And then a question of staff, if I might. Is it accurate that the town does not notify the neighbors when there is a removal of this kind of tree, which I will call a heritage oak?
We have not.
And then circling back to this ordinance here and the questions and answers just being discussed between Ms. Jensen and Ms. Propp. We have 9 criteria, and the 9th one is whether the protected tree has a significant impact on the property. What is the process used by the town in analyzing whether a tree should be reduced in size, torn down, or none of the above when examining the 9 criteria, including number 9?
Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
First, clarification, if I may, Mayor, to the Councilwoman's question and the prior answer. We do provide notice for removal of trees in the public right-of-way, but there is not required notice for trees on private property. Also, the heritage definition, I believe, does not exist in the town code at this time, though if there were one, this tree would certainly qualify by any standard. In terms of the criteria, it's the staff the on-staff arborist or a consulting arborist who reviews an application for a tree permit against these criteria. That is for the tree removal application. That is separate from the tree trimming, which is a restriction of 25%, which in this case, the arborist was on site, in fact, with other staff for a period of times as well to monitor the tree trimming.
I understand that, but what we're talking about now tonight is a tree removal. And so I'm looking at the balancing of these criteria, including the balancing in or factoring in of number 9, and how that's done or if it's done.
I don't know off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Councilmember McNutt.
Thank you. Although we were talking about tree removal, I did want to circle back just on the tree trimming. So 25% is allowed. If they're not allowed to remove the tree, what can they do next year? Is it 25% every year?
No, it's not. That tree was balanced out by the homeowner's tree trimmer at 25%. We anticipate it'll take 7 to 10 years for that growth or that tree to regrow back to where it can be additional tree size can be reduced again.
So let me rephrase or ask an additional question. Do you require a tree permit anytime you touch a tree, or can I not on my property do what I would consider to be minor trimming, and then we get into the definition of what's minor without a permit? So that's the crux that I'm getting at here.
Less than 25% you can do without a permit.
Okay, so they would be free to keep modifying the tree to a certain extent.
Anything over minor tree trimming for sucker growth on that tree would severely stress that tree. Most likely the tree would perish.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. There's nothing in the proposed ordinance if the council were to decide to deny the appeal with respect to additional trimming. And I was actually thinking about the same question, which is, okay, you've taken 25% off, so you have a smaller tree. Then you take another 25%, then you take another 25%. So does the council have the option to add a condition that indicates that the tree shall not be trimmed without approval of a town arborist? Because you're indicating that it could be damaged such that it's going to die. That's Mr. Larson or Ms. Prop or Ms. Regan. Because once you take a tree down and you make it 25% less, now you got a tree that's 100%, but it's 25% less. So pretty soon you have no tree.
So when you look at the specific ordinance, it doesn't address that issue as how do you measure the 25%. I think what I understood from Mr. Regan's answer, although I'll let him clarify it, is that town staff wouldn't, if there was a subsequent trimming either with or without a permit, staff would react because they wouldn't allow another tree trimming permit for anything until there was some further additional growth. However, when you look at the ordinance, it doesn't provide if you, the item before you allows you to either approve the appeal, deny the appeal, send it back, ask for more information, whatnot, rather than condition it. However, council always has the ability to direct the town manager to take action on a matter of council interest and then implement it according to council's direction and advise staff of that.
Thank you.
In my only comment, so the condition to a denial, there's nothing to add it to, but direction to staff. And Ms. Mosley has found in the tree trimming section that there is some discretion given to the director in certain cases. If you could read that language, I think it starts on pruning and maintenance.
So under section 2910.1010 regarding pruning and maintenance, it discusses that all pruning and maintenance shall be done to the standards established by the International Society of Arboriculture, sorry. And that, and any special conditions as determined by the director can be in relation to any tree pruning. And basically that the pruning should be done by a certified or consulting arborist.
So with the approval of a denial, direction could be provided to staff under that discretion.
Mr. Brzezinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to disclose, since we're kind of doing this randomly, as Councilwoman inspected, I visited the property. I talked to Mr. Bellato. I was able to see the interior of the garage, the route as demonstrated by the visuals that were shown, so that's by way of disclosure. I also wanted to clarify something that was mentioned at the mic by one of the individuals. I believe it was Ms. Decker, that after this particular issue was the approval of the permit was then rescinded, that we have changed our policies or processes. Would you clarify that, please?
It's my understanding that if somebody is proposing to remove a tree based on structural damage, the town will now be requiring that they provide a structural condition report.
All right, so it has, in effect, it has changed our direction.
I don't know if that's gone into place yet.
Okay.
That is the intent.
Yeah, and my assumption is we're not going to design from the dais again tonight, because we were here in 2003 when we wrote that tree ordinance. We based it very much on Palo Alto's fairly rigid tree requirements. And I think we've done a very good job in the course of this long period of time to make this a tree-friendly community. So I want to not kind of ignore the fact that the place is as beautiful as it is because we do believe in preserving our treescape, and the staff has worked diligently to make sure that's happened. But that being said, I'm curious how we can come to a situation wherein we can draw close here and not assume guilt on anyone's part, but see how do we find our way out of this. I think that the Planning Commission's majority position was that there's an acceptance that there was damage to this particular structure caused by the tree as a result of the arborist comments, but that the number 2 condition about mitigations that would preserve both the tree and the garage structure have not been adequately investigated. And I know that the result of that was this determination of the elimination of the structure, moving it out, attaching it to the house, and that was kind of the outcome. But I'm wondering if there is some intermediate step that can be taken whereby the tree can be protected and the concrete slab, that's basically the most obvious damage, can be dealt with. I appreciate the comments made by the individual who made the proposals for the 4 different options to remove the garage, etc. But in my viewing the concrete slab, it's about 3 inches. It was laid on the dirt. There is no rebar, but that's 1951. And I think probably if you look at most of our relatively vintage homes in this community, that's pretty much standard, and that it's subject to not only intrusion by tree roots, but also ground movement and water seepage and various things. I think it's called the aging process as far as I'm concerned. And so my question is, can we get to a point where we can say, maybe I should get to the point where I can say, I can't find evidence that would indicate validity in removing this tree. And I would like to propose that we discuss this from this point, from the perspective of preserving the tree, preserving its character in the neighborhood, preserving the heritage nature of it, and it is one of the protected trees. And we do have in our tree audit a list of protected trees, which includes the coast oak. So, I look at this and I say, we've got language that protects it. The current situation doesn't demand removal. Not every structure is equal. If this were up against the bedroom itself, undercutting the foundation of the residential structure, we may be in a different situation. But from the perspective of where we are now, I, as a member of the council, would rather see us come to some agreement that we can protect the root system of the tree itself, perhaps looking at the reconstruction of the slab of the garage, and move forward from this point.
Vice Mayor.
I'd like to try a motion, following up on Mr. Brzezinski's comments. I think that the action of the council is to uphold the Planning Commission's decision and deny the appeal, or to accept the appeal. My motion would be to uphold the Planning Commission's decision in denying tree removal permit T13-070 and adopt a resolution denying an appeal of the Planning Commission decision. For the tree removal in attachment 4, as is contained in paragraph 1 or page 1 of our staff report. I think it's easy for us to not find, I don't think it's a question of guilt, but we have before us a valid decision of the Planning Commission. It was actually a 4-3 decision, and Mr. O'Donnell was a dissenter. I appreciate the reading of his comments, but he was a dissenter. And the Planning Commission did say that the tree should be preserved. This town council can reverse decisions of the planning commission where there is error or abuse of discretion. I don't think there's any evidence of that. Where there's new information that's submitted to the council during the appeal process that was not readily and reasonably available. The photographs are new. It was obviously available. The tree was there. There have been different reports by different arborists, almost competing arborists, but that information was available. Or there was an issue or a policy over which the commission did not have discretion to modify or make a decision. They clearly had discretion in this case. So I think that's an easy one, that I don't think there's a basis under our own ordinances to overturn the decision of the Planning Commission. Further, I'd say in April of this year, the town of Los Gatos was fortunate enough to celebrate its 33rd anniversary as a Tree City, USA. And that is an honor that is given to cities for their urban forest management. And Los Gatos has been a proud recipient of that for over a quarter of a century. And it's because we take care of our urban forest canopy that we get that kind of recognition and that we tout it, as a matter of fact, in various celebrations. We did that on Arbor Day when we opened Paget Park behind this building. Under 29.100990, our standards of review, there are 9. The famous number 1 is only one of them. And I am with Councilperson Brzezinski. All structures are not equal, particularly a cement slab put down in 1958 that was evidencing damage when the appellants bought the house versus a 150-year-old oak tree. I'm not convinced that a healthy tree is suddenly going to fall. It survived a 1989 earthquake. It survived many windstorms, some of them more than 65 miles per hour. It survived, no doubt, lightning storms, rainstorms, falling electric wires, whatever. That's not to say that it may not suddenly up and fall, but I'm not going to make that bet to allow this tree to be cut down. Number 2 in our ordinance says that the condition of the tree giving rise to the permit application cannot be reduced to less significant levels. It can be. It's just as Ms. Mathieu said, the owner of the home takes on the responsibility of caring for those trees. I've got a bunch of oaks on my property that some are in good condition, some aren't, but I take the time to spray them and do whatever I can to preserve those oaks, and that's just a responsibility that you take on being a resident and buying a home with a gigantic 150-year-old tree on it. The parcel can, under number 4 of our ordinance, support more than one tree. It's only got one tree on it. Number 5 doesn't apply because there's no proposed subdivision. Number 6 doesn't apply because we're not talking about reducing the building footprint. Number 8, removal of the protected tree will not result in a substantial adverse change in the site's aesthetic and biological significance. We have had a lot of testimony tonight that, in fact, it will do that, just that. It will result in a substantial adverse change to the site's aesthetic and biological significance. And a number of neighbors and people that live in the town know that that tree canopy in Glen Ridge is important, and a removal of a tree like that would change that neighborhood. Whether the protected tree has a significant impact on the property, Councilwoman Spector talked about that, and it's interesting how you interpret that. Significant impact in that it's an asset, or significant impact in that it hurts a 58-year-old cement slab? I'm going to say significant impact because it's an asset. And so that's the basis for my motion to deny the appeal.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'm going to second it and say that when I was reading whether the protected tree had a significant impact on the property, I was looking at that tree from a very positive perspective.
Further discussion. Councilmember McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be supporting the motion because of the reasons that have been articulated, but it's one of those things where when you buy a property, it was part of the reason why the property was appealing. It's unfortunate that the carport turned into a garage was located where it was. It was too close to begin with. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this problem. The homeowner has many options available, including doing nothing. I am not persuaded by, oh my gosh, it's going to fall down, because as Mr. Brzezinski said, then any tree could fall down at any time. And we've heard that many times of people who wanting to have trees removed, that afraid it's going to fall on their children playing underneath and so on. So that's a common justification for it. I am very concerned about the trimming, and I don't know exactly, I didn't get a real clear answer on what we can do going forward, because if the trimming of less than 25% doesn't require a permit, the town would not even be aware of it. And I do know of one particular striking tree over on Wilder that disappeared after tree removal was not approved many years ago by just whittling it away. So I hope that we can have some kind of protection worked in there. I don't think the homeowner is going to do that, but I do think that we need to keep an eye on trees that are in high-profile positions like this. So I feel the pain of having to figure out what to do with the property in order to accommodate both wanting a garage and having this tree, and that's just something that we as homeowners have to deal with.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question of staff. Right now, because of the trimming, there are, visually, there are what I will call bald, chopped off limbs. And because of the light wood, they're very visible. When you talk about this regrowth, will those branches be, what will happen to those branches? Will they be covered? Will they grow back? I don't know what happens.
You're talking about the fresh cuts on the...
Yes.
Those will eventually grow over, scab over as they call it. It's going to take a number of years for that to occur, but they will gradually do that as long as the tree is in good health.
All right, and I know what that is. And when you say number of years, we're talking about 1, 5, 25?
I would say probably 5 to 10 years.
All right, thank you.
Further discussion? Vice Mayor?
Through the mayor to Mr. Larson and to the seconder, could I ask you to restate what our option is for direction to staff to make sure that the tree is protected?
Yes. With or without direction, staff would have the discretion under the clause we read before, which, just to provide a reference for the record, is 29.10.1010, pruning and maintenance. The code does allow trimming of up to 25% of protected trees annually. However, it does not allow actions that result in the removal of a tree, which includes pruning, trimming, or cutting that leads to the demise of the tree. And with this section, the director has the discretion to establish special conditions to for the monitoring of pruning and maintenance, and staff would be inclined to do so following your action tonight.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to specifically add that direction to staff that's been stated by Mr. Larson to my motion if it's accepted by the seconder.
I would like that also.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries unanimously. This meeting is adjourned.